So let's say you found a skeleton. How would you tell if it represents you personally? How would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do research on that.
Hey everybody, welcome to the third annual Cambrian Bunny nomination ceremony. I am here with, of course, TD Lane, Jordan, Erica from Gutsick Gibbon, Zach B. Hancock, and Dr. Dan from, coughing, sorry about that, from Creationists. Maybe I inhaled some of this margarita and I just didn't notice until now. It's possible. Very unlikely though. So, in case any of you who are here watching are new to the Cambrian Bunny Awards, this is my annual Creationist award show, where we have 4 categories: worst argument, worst use of the English language, worst behaved, and of course, best overall, because we don't want it to all just be a negative downer fest, right? We want to give credit where it's due. And every year there's a creationist out there who deserves to be recognized as not the worst, but the best within the category of young Earth creationists. So it's very much on a curve, but still, someone's at the top of the curve within that category. So we want to recognize that person. Now, the way this works is my panel here, and a little bit of myself, have nominated certain people. But who actually is going to win within that group of nominees is entirely up to the audience, because I'm going to be putting out polls that you can vote in. And yes, if you have alt accounts, you can vote in the poll more than once. You can stack the poll by sending the poll to your closest 5,000 friends and telling them to all make 3 YouTube accounts and vote for Nathaniel Jansen. You can do that. It's fine, because ultimately, this show doesn't actually matter. But hey, any of the people who win, which will be announced next month, if you want, I will send you a 3D printed version of the Cambrian Bunny trophy with your name engraved on it.
Has anybody ever taken you up on that?
No. No one has. Although, to be fair, this is the first year I'm offering a physical trophy. Before, it was just an image of a trophy because I didn't have a 3D printer.
I want to know, like, refresh our memory. Who's reigned victorious in previous years?
So I don't think I have the numbers for the year before this, but let's see. Rebecca won best overall. That's Bread of Life.
That's nice. That's adequate.
Worst behaved, I think. So I know 2 years ago Kent won worst behaved, and that was when he was doing some beating of romantic partners. Also, I want to say for 1999, Rosana Keller says, "Yay, this is live. Hello, everyone," with a hug emoji and a heart emoji. Well, thank you very much, Rosana Keller. It's very generous, and hello to you too. I can't hug over the internet. I have not figured out that technology yet.
You also have very little arms.
Yeah, but they're already positioned right for hugging, right? Because they can go against each other.
Sure.
In fact, their main use is in like prey restraint, which is a hugging motion. So they're pre-adapted for hugging. I just have to make sure that the claws don't dig in too much.
I didn't know they were adapted for that. I'm like bowled over. You're gonna knock me over with a feather.
Dinosaurs, great huggers for the most part. Yep.
Wow, that's so cute.
Also, Pibblepunk, half dog, half canine, for $5 says, "Thanks to all our hosts. This is going to be fun." So yeah. So the way that we're going to do this is we're going to go through. First, we're going to go clockwise, and then we're going to go counterclockwise, and clockwise and counterclockwise again. And so, starting out is worst argument. Now, remember, this has to be something that was done in the year 2023. That it could be any time during that year, all the way from January to the end of December. If it occurred during that year, or mostly during that year, then okay. Like if someone started like a series of articles in like December 2022, and then they finished it in February 2023, I'm fine with that being a one thing that you want to nominate them for.
As Deborah, as you said, this doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Rules.
Yeah, the rules are there. They're more like guidelines. Narumbaputs, who's been a member for 4 months and is at the annual level, says, "I feel lucky to be catching this bit of absurdity live." Yes, me too. I'm drinking a margarita, by the way. If you do, in fact, chat with any of our AIG or a bag of dicks options, I will take a drink. I will encourage my my fellow panel members to also take a quick sip of whatever it is they're drinking. But let's start with TD. TD, do you have a nominee for worst argument for 2023?
You know what I do? I'm going to nominate Robert Carter based on his argument against Erica's destruction of him, which was like, I know you used my method, but you're still wrong.
My favorite part about that was when he said, "I'm not going to talk about what Erica said." And it's just like, oh, okay.
So okay, I gotta intersect here. Like I gotta intercede because on one hand, like I'm a firm believer, and I said this in my video series. I don't think when Rob made that video, that initial video, that he'd actually like watched my video or even started running his own tests. I still hold to that because he was like, oh, afterwards, every subsequent video was like, oh, this is like an unintentional series. So I don't believe that he'd run the test. But to his credit, he did actually, afterwards, after receiving the flag, he went and did run a lot of tests. And, like, he showed that I was wrong on something.
Yeah.
Which, like, credit to him. That's awesome. The only problem is that then he released an additional video. And in that video, not only did he completely just avoid talking about Tompkins continually, like, as he's been doing for several months at this point, but he actually misconstrued some like additional processes within Blast, as well as seemingly misunderstand what both I and Glenn did, which like, dude, I get it, right? Like it's a hard program to learn. Like I barely understand it myself, but to be fair, I study morphology, right? Like Carter does genetics. He's a marine biologist, but he has published on genetics and he's focused on it quite a bit before.
Yep. No, I've been told repeatedly that he's a geneticist. Repeatedly,
so have I.
Yeah.
From everybody.
Right,
I've heard it as well.
Right, so you would think that, like, okay, he's setting out to make this video that's like, okay, debunking Glenn and debunking Erica, aka That's a Given. You would think that if those were the two goals, you would 100% cover all your bases, including read the paper by Glenn that has the foundational argument that you said in your previous video that you had access to. And yet he just didn't do that. And I don't understand why he felt so comfortable almost posturing so confidently when like he also didn't do his due diligence. And like from my perspective, I'm happy to sit here and be like, yeah, I was wrong on this, that, and the other thing, right? Like,
see, Erica, he can be confident because he knows that he has God on his side. And since God knows everything, no matter what, as long as it agrees with God's word, it's going to be right. So he doesn't have to cover all his bases.
He's a pre-supper, right? Yeah. I mean, he said that multiple times in various videos, right? Like, he's like, yeah, there may be this additional data, but I know that my interpretation of the Bible, which he frames as the Bible, is correct.
Obviously.
And like, that, first of all, I want to take my, opportunity to always say, Rob, your interpretation of the Bible isn't everyone's interpretation. You can say all day long that like you're right and whatever, and like you have divine revelation. Your interpretation is the best and truest. But it's like the majority of Christians are cool with evolution in the ancient age of the earth, right? Like you're probably turning more people away than you are bringing into the fold, which is sad. But like, yeah, TD, as far as like worst argument at that point in time, I 100% agree that when he made that video, he had not watched anything that I had done, or at least very little.
That's why we all released videos, well, not all of it, but like you, me, and Dan released videos almost simultaneously about him basically just being a liar.
It's really weird how we do that.
Yeah, it's just a big coincidence.
How do you guys do that?
It's so strange. He was like, I brought down the legions of YouTube upon me. It's like, no, dude, we just know each other.
Right.
We know each other.
It's like I've said, it's certainly not like Dan and Erica and I are in a group chat called the Triumvirate on Twitter. That's definitely not a thing. That would never happen. Also, for $5 with their first super chat on a live stream, Cognitive Trifurcation says AIG is a meal from Seattle's favorite dine-in chain. I'm going to take a drink for that. Thank you very much.
Can I, while we're pausing for a dapper drink break there, can I just show of hands, except for TD Lane, I'll just, if you could animate that little wing there in that picture, but who nominated Rob Carter for this category? Who else nominated?
Not for this category.
Well, hold on.
I
feel like we're going to be talking about Rob Carter a lot.
Yeah.
Hang on a second. Point of order. I am not nominating Rob Carter. It's worst argument, not worst person who made an argument.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, fair enough.
So, and yeah, okay. So that was one. So the argument that just got nominated was the BS. Erica's wrong. I'm not going to say why, because I haven't watched your video. Okay, so that's what was just nominated.
Fair.
So
well, let's move to Jordan then, who also has apparently nominated an argument for Robert Carter.
I have. So this argument is in kind of a chain from past years. I try to stay away from biology because it's gross and dumb. But the argument is that the mutation rate equals the fixation rate. And that's just right.
Yeah,
Classic.
that's okay. Now, so for the audience, let's explain what those two things are.
So I could explain it as an engineer, but even though I'm the one who nominated it, and I am equipped to explain it if forced,
all right,
we do have a biologist on the stream,
well, I'm gonna
so maybe he should explain.
I'm going to try to give a go because I'm not a biologist, and if I can get it right as per like Zach, who's a population geneticist, then that means that me, some random asshole on YouTube, can do better than Rob Carter at genetics.
I don't know. If we want the dumbest person on biology to do it, it's probably me.
Well, okay, but
go ahead.
You said you didn't want to. Okay, so the mutation rate is the rate at which mutations happen per reproductive event of a cell, right? So every time a cell divides, there's going to be mutations. The mutation rate is measuring that. Now, you can do a per generation mutation rate for a multicellular organism, which is going to measure the number of mutations between offspring and parent, and then maybe like, great-grandparent or something like that, right? The fixation is the rate at which particular alleles in the whole gene pool of an entire population reach fixation, that's to say every member of the population has that particular allele and there's no more variation at that locus in the genome. Those rates cannot be the same because things eliminate mutations like genetic drift and natural selection. To say the fixation rate is the mutation rate is to deny things like natural selection and genetic drift even exist, which is completely insane.
Oh, go ahead, Zach. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna throw a population genetic perspective in here. So just to clarify, the mutation and substitution rate can be equal. They theoretically can be equivalent to each other. And this goes back to Sol Wright, 1938, and then again into Kimura in 83. So it is possible that those things can be equivalent if and only if the mutations are purely neutral and the rate of fixation is completely dictated by genetic drift.
Right.
If those things are true, then the mutation rate equals the fixation rate.
The way I think about it, or it was helpful as me, an idiot, to think about it, is that the mutation rate cannot possibly exceed the fixation rate. Because the fixation rate is how fast the mutations are fixating, and they can't fixate faster than they show up, right?
So
except for in positive selection.
Okay.
So if there's positive selection, the rate of fixation.
You could look at a subset, but like if you just looked at.
By the way, for $20,
you average it across.
Jake Nelson says, Dapper, Gutsick, Dr. Dan, TD Lane in one stream. That's worth a dub. I mean, hey, we've also got Zach Hancock and Jordan.
Yes, screwed Zach and me.
Damn, I can't believe
these are
wow.
These two are.
I can't believe it. But anyway, to finish the thing, so they can't, like, the mutation rate can't exceed the fixation rate, right? So if you think natural selection has any effect, it has to reduce the fixation rate. That's the only other option.
Can't be matched, right? Because if there's natural selection, then not all the mutations are neutral. Because if they were neutral, they wouldn't be acted on by natural selection. That's kind of what it means to be neutral, is that there's no fitness effect, so you can't be acted on by natural selection.
If there's natural selection at all, then the two, they diverge from each other.
They have to do
and the great part about this that I love so much is that Rob Carter is he's written, papers, we'll call them, against the ICR natural selection is fake thing, right? So he's out there. Natural selection is real. Nobody disagrees with that. Everyone agrees that natural selection operates. And also the mutation rate equals the fixation rate.
So Dan, that's what I was going to ask, right? As I was going to say, like, those of us who are like hip to the Rob Carter jive, right? Like who looked at what Rob Carter is like published on this subject. What does he say? Because like I've seen him, I've been watching a copious amount of Rob Carter lectures lately because I'm doing a video on him soon. But like I've heard him with my own ears say multiple times that like correctly define fitness and correctly define selection. So I'm wondering how he gets around that.
It's very simple. He doesn't know what he's talking about when it comes to population genetics. It's not more complicated than that. Zach and I are reviewing a paper of his that I think this paper nearly killed Zach reading this paper because like I will never yesterday was going through this paper and highlighting and making little notes of like all the wrong things. And it's just like he says things in this And this is like here's how we explain the mutation rate, the substitution rate being the same thing. Like, this is his big, it was from the ICC, the Creation Conference, right? This big, like, I'm going to answer this question academically paper. And one of the lines in this paper, he's going through all these simulations, but he's like, and of course we have to consider that natural selection operates more efficiently in small populations. It's like, what? That is the opposite of true.
I'm taking a drink
friend.
for that right there. That is wow.
That is,
even I know that.
That is
one
you
that's
just
a spoiler.
failed the midterm.
You just dropped the bombshell that we were going to discuss.
Oh my goodness!
Don't worry. Look, don't worry. It's going to be great. There's so much more in that paper. There's so much meat in that paper. But that line, it's like, congratulations, you just failed the midterm in my 200 level introductory evolution class. Like,
seriously,
that is, how did you write this paper and not like? How do you not understand basic? So that's a good nominee for worst argument because like the foundations of that argument coming from Carter are amazing.
All right, so
I've got a joke on that. Forbidden knowledge, effect, constant. Take a random amount of damage on every line you read.
Yeah, that does sound like a pretty good magic card there. Steve Reno for $5 says, Dappa, you said Rebecca won last year, but I looked at last year's stream and Paleo Logos won Best Creationist. He beat Rebecca by 1 vote.
2 years ago.
I thought that was 2 years ago. Maybe
it must have been 2 years ago because those are the two winners for that, right?
Yeah.
Paleo Logos, Peter deserves to win almost every year. I want to make that clear. I rarely see better like performance or like thoughtfulness than from Peter. Maybe Todd Wood is up there. Kurt Wise.
Peter may not have won that one yet because I think Todd Wood won the first year.
Oh, it's possible.
So it might have been Todd and then Rebecca. And Peter hasn't won
or
yet.
It could be that Peter won last year and we're all just misremembering because Steve Reno says that
Peter hasn't won. I'm changing my vote. If Peter has not won, I'm changing my vote. I want that front and center.
I feel like I'm pretty sure Peter won last year. I feel like I rewatched this not that long ago, and
I don't remember.
I'm going to go check right now.
All right. Well, Rosa Keller for $4.99 says, didn't you hear all mutations always occur to different genes and they're always immediately fixing the population? Yes, that's how genes work. DM artificially selected Ceratopsian wing for $5 says, for reasons to doubt Bowtie Man.
Ooh.
So, yeah,
at least somebody appreciates the classiness I bring to this.
I'm happy to say that I am the one that this show, actually, the Cambrian Bunny, is the reason that Jordan has the bow tie t-shirt look. Because I said to him that he did not look classy enough for such a high-class event, so he tossed on a bow tie on top of his t-shirt.
There you go.
Nice.
That's true.
So, yeah, I'm very happy to have that small little part in the story that is Jordan. All right, so no, we got to move on, TV.
Yeah,
we got to move on.
high class.
We
have so many people here. We got to do it.
We're already 18 minutes into this. Dan, who is your nomination for the person who gave the worst argument, and for what argument?
All right. So my nominee, and there's a backstory here. The backstory is that this person was nominated for 3 categories last year. Came up completely dry. Shut out. And that is unconscionable. So I am nominating Harvard PhD, Dr. Nathaniel Jansen for worst argument. And I am nominating him for, you all probably remember this, but it was so long ago. I thought it was 2022, and I was delighted when I went back and found this happened in 2023. It was all the way back in March. He finally got around to doing that I'm going to respond to the critics of traced videos. And he specifically called out me and Herman Mays and Joel Duff. And then he ignored Herman Mays and Joel Duff, and he just focused on me.
Wow.
But out of this like 20-some-odd minute video, there were literally 3 minutes that were, here's the argument this Dan guy made, and here's why it's wrong. There were 3 minutes. And his counter argument was he pulled up a screenshot from my review of the book Traced, where I showed a figure from an evolution textbook that I think does a really nice job illustrating the difference between genealogy and phylogeny. Right? And I showed this figure, and because his whole book is based on genealogy, and like you can't do the analysis he wants to do using genealogical stuff. You have to do phylogenetic analysis for like time to most recent common ancestor calculations and coalescent analysis. You can't use genealogy for that. So he pulls up this slide, he said, here's the argument, and here's the thing I want to show you. Look in the corner. He has the reference. That reference is for a textbook. Ladies and gentlemen, he's just quoting the textbook. That's his argument.
my God.
His argument is because the textbook says so. Here's why I'm nominating this for worst argument. The reference was for the picture I used. It was not for the argument I was making.
Yep.
The reference was just for the figure that I used because that's what you do.
Dan,
if you use
are
somebody
you
else's
saying-
picture, you reference it.
Are you saying that Nathaniel Jansen might have actually not paid attention to your video and might just be...
Crazy.
No, that's not at all what I'm
That's crazy.
suggesting. I'm suggesting he's a liar.
Got it. Got it.
Let's be clear. No, I'm not suggesting that he is so incompetent that he responded to a video without having watched the video and not actually
That's more of
understanding
a
the
Rob
arguments.
Carter
No,
thing.
that's not what I'm suggesting. I'm suggesting that he watched the video because this dude Googles himself almost
Oh,
daily.
yeah.
I am like 100%. Okay, this dude's got like a Google notification, right? Like. He watched every minute of that video and Joel's and Herman May's multiple times,
Oh, yeah.
and he lied about it. Like that
Yeah.
straight up. Like let's be clear about what's going on here. I have as little respect for Nathaniel Jansen as he has for his audience. Let's put it that way.
Ooh, that's rough, because I know how he
Like,
treats his audience.
yeah.
Jeez.
Nobody disrespects their audience more than a young Earth creationist.
It's so
and even
true.
worse. And nobody liked Jansen. Nobody liked Jansen. So I'm nominating Nathaniel Jansen for the argument that the traced critics are wrong because they're just parroting a textbook. That's
Nice.
That's my nominee for worst argument.
All right, Zach, who is your choice for the creationists who gave the worst argument in 2023, and what is the argument?
Okay, so mine is going to one retired Cornell geneticist, and it is not for the argument that you might think.
Okay.
It's an even better one. And so this must have been sometime in the summer. He gave like a Why Darwin Was Wrong lecture.
I responded to that. I remember that. That was terrible.
And at that time, you could still comment under those videos.
Of course.
And so so the argument, I'll tell you what the argument was. And this is John Sanford. I don't know if I actually named him, but the argument was this, that Darwin was wrong and that we shouldn't listen to what Darwin said because he was just an armchair philosopher who did no experiments. So it's not even that like he makes a scientifically inaccurate argument. It's like historically inaccurate. It's like
Wow.
you could just read Origin of Species. You could read any of his like other papers, his dozens of other books, and all of the experiments that they did. Last summer, I went to the Evolution Conference, and there was a speaker named James Costa who spent his entire lecture trying to put forward like educational materials for like high school and middle school students using Darwin's experiments. Like just getting them to recreate all of Darwin's many experiments, and he created a whole semester of it. So like Darwin did lots of experiments.
Even if he's right that Darwin was just an armchair philosopher who didn't do any experiments, right? Okay, so that's basically the same argument as we should throw out modern physics because Newton did a whole bunch of weird alchemy stuff and he drank mercury. So we should just get rid of Newtonian mechanics. Like, wait a minute. No, we shouldn't. That's a really bad reason to get rid of Newtonian mechanics.
Yeah, so I just like listed in the comment section every single experiment, every single book that he written, and just dozens of them. And it must have had like 30 replies to it of just like people, crying, and then they cut the comments off. Right? So and from there on out, you could not comment on any of those videos.
I also liked when he said that Darwin didn't do any math in Origin of the Species, and all I did was I went to Project Gutenberg, opened up the 6th edition, and typed the word 0 after hitting Control F. And oh my god, look at that! I found a whole bunch of examples of Darwin doing math in the Origin of Species. It's like, Dr. Sanford,
like,
did you look at this book that you're talking about? Did you read it? No, you didn't. In fact, actually, I had Sal try to defend that work from Sanford to me, and his excuse was, well, a lot of that is based on Rupe's work. So I'm like, I'm sorry, you're telling me that this guy just trusted his co-author, Rupe, and didn't bother to check anything?
Listen, Rupe is... I'm going to say something to me. I think Rupe is hopeless. Some of the stuff that Rupe has said in Contested Bones is actually impossible to say unless you have specifically read the literature and then chosen to take the opposite position of whatever it is in the literature, right? Like he talks about how the foramen magnum isn't preserved in Ardipithecus ramidus, and then on that same page in the book, he has a picture of an inferior view of Ardipithecus ramidus, the ARA classic specimens cranium. You can see the foramen magnum in the picture.
I'm taking a drink for that one.
I remember reading it when I was reviewing the series, when I was reviewing the book, right? And like, I'm still reviewing the book. I've been really busy. Like last semester was like cratered me and everything. But
that's a
I
raw
remember
map
reading that and being
by the
like,
way.
what is going on? Like the picture is right there. I don't know how you can get away with that. And like, I remember too, I can't remember who it was. I think it was Donnie. I can't remember though. So like, don't quote me on this, you know, but like in an email exchange, it was like, okay, like why did Sanford put his name on this? Right. And it's like, no, Sanford only like contributed the genetic entropy stuff to contested bones. The rest was Rupe. And you know what? The biggest telling thing about that, I don't know if he didn't read it or what. Like, I don't know what he did on it, but I know that Rupe is currently like, he just pivoted completely and he's doing geology now. Like, obviously he couldn't cut it with paleo. He's not doing paleontology. He's not doing paleoanthropology. He's not doing anatomy. He's not doing primatology. No bioanth. Like he just completely pivoted away from that entire idea. And just to be clear, I bought what is it called? It's called The Bones of Contention, which was the precursor to Contested Bones by Lubenow. Right, the guys who came before this is what Contested Bones was a spiritual successor to. And Rupe lifted so many arguments from that thing. Like a lot of those arguments aren't even his.
So
we just took the title. So.
We have a couple quick super chats to go through. Jake Nelson for $10 says, Dr. Zach, speak on it. And then You Little Rascal for 100 Argentinian pesos says, is AIG a bag of Rupes? And then says, I have no idea how to spell his name. That's what I hear. It's R-U-P-E and Rupe. Then we're going like Rupes apostrophe S, like R-U-P-E apostrophe S for the possessive. That's how you spell that. And yes, they are. We'll take a drink for it.
Can I just very briefly say that considering Rupe is also in the credits as the writer for Dismantled, he not yet coming up in the Cambrian Bunnies is the biggest snub. Like this is the guy who can't win, even though he deserves it. Like,
he can't even get nominated in the losers competition.
So he was very close to my nominee, actually.
Okay,
because him and Donnie had that genetic entropy paper from earlier this year that I almost nominated, but it's just Sanford. It's not their thing. So I felt like it's not really their argument.
So they also, Donnie and Rupe, did their release of like, see how we found the telomere to telomere fusion calling card of like the repeats in forward and backward. They're like, we found it, and it's not actually in the center, like it's not in chromosome 2, right? It's not in the center of chromosome 2. You know where it was? It was in the telomeric region of chromosome 9.
Yeah.
It was in the telomere region.
Yeah.
Wow, you're kidding me. In the billions of base pairs in the human genome, you found a single reverse, right? A single a mutation that reversed a single TTAGGG in the telomeric region of chromosome. That's crazy, bro. That's nuts. And it's one repeat, mind you. Like, I think it's one. It might be two.
But Erica, didn't you say that the number of repeats was immaterial? I think I remember Donnie saying that that's what you said, and it didn't matter how many of the repeats there were.
I honestly, like, I'm convinced this is where the utility is in cornering Donnie in an actual conversation, because if you don't actually get him to, like, in a one-on-one talk, he will repeat the same nonsense forever.
I mean, welcome to young creationism.
Yeah, he just repeats the same thing. You know what? Oh, Jordan. Okay, I'm so sorry. I have to say this. Jordan, in the heat problem video,
midnight.
In his heat problem solution video the other day, I didn't even put this because I was typing so fast in the comments. He asked the guest who was solving the heat problem, and I know Dan is going to be like, oh yeah, I remember that. He goes, now, what do you think about, some people have proposed, like, hypercanes as a solution. Like, what do you think about that? And I was like, we already debunked this! Jordan gave you the math! What are you talking about at this point? Like, I realize I'm getting really animated, but I was like, how many times are we going to have to correct him on this?
Okay.
How many times do I need to teach you this lesson, old man?
But Erica, have you considered hypercanes?
Jordan, and
My solution was 24/7 Earth-wide hypercane.
Which is physically impossible. You can't actually do
You
that.
can't get a bigger hypercane. Jordan goes, you know what? You know what you can't get bigger than? The surface of the Earth.
Throws argument out of the bar. Argument still in the bar.
It's
yes.
just an
This
endless
is the
not my
Donnie
walls.
Deals thing,
Erica,
right?
this
Isn't
one
that what
is-
they called this?
This is specifically
It's a
for you.
dinosaur.
Savage Geological Species Concept, Cobra, says for $2. But have you considered A?
But have you considered A? But have you considered A? It's always a Donnie Deal fallacy, 100% of the time. Like, and when he says something new, it's not actually something new. It's something from 10 years ago that he thinks we forgot about.
Right.
Like,
Or that he
every
just
time.
discovered for the first time.
Or, yeah.
Or that he just discovered. Right.
All right, so let's finish off our first category with Erica. Erica, who did you nominate for having given the worst argument, and what was the argument?
So I'm actually nominating the entire Standing for Truth channel for this, and it's for their multiple attempts at solving the heat problem for the year. It's for the multiple times McQueen tried to solve it. It's for bringing on David to try to solve it. It's for Redefine Living's theological heat problem, which was literally, I kid you not, you guys are going to hell, so solve your heat problem first, right? That was the heat problem. So I'm going to gesture to
That's
the
weird.
entire attempt at the Standing for Truth channel for the year at solving the heat problem. And I want it specifically contrasted with the most recent publication that Answers in Genesis put out in their Thermal Problems for the Genesis Flood series, which was like, yup, we have another small factor that in and of itself completely precludes the Genesis Flood with regard to the heat. It's going to be a miracle, boys.
Actually-
but like Donnie can't bring himself to say it.
Just this week, I was having a chat with a creationist, Rob Groen, with on Jackson Wheat's channel, and one of the things is I said that, like, look, the flood is by the statements of creationists themselves, like the top people in creationism who are working on the flood. They say it's physically impossible. It's like, no, they don't. I'm like, yeah, they do. The conclusions of the rate team were that they needed new physics or miracles. What that means is there is no physics that would allow for this event. Therefore, it is physically impossible. It's not logically impossible. It's not impossible if you allow for miracles. I'll grant you those things. But it is physically impossible. And he was just like, no. Okay, cool. That's great.
And like Donnie's channel in particular is so reticent on this. Like, they are being dragged kicking and screaming, and we all know you're already seeing hints of it in that chat with David, in the chat with Sam of Redefined Living. They're already starting to posture and say, well, who cares if it is a miracle? I care.
Yeah.
We care if it's a miracle. And the second that comes out of your mouth, that salt is going right in the wound, buddy. Like, I'm really sorry, but I'm going to gleefully rejoice in this because we've been working at this for so long. Just own it. It's fine. Like, we'll take it from there.
All right, so here's what we're doing. I'm going to be setting up a poll right now. This is going to be vote for the young Earth creationist who gave the worst argument in 2023. All right, so Jeffrey Tompkins, what is a quick summary of the Tompkins argument?
I don't think we nominated Tompkins. I think we nominated, it was Carter.
I was nominated Carter for his.
How did I write down
Carters.
Jeffrey Tompkins then? Whatever, that's fine. So Nathaniel Jansen, what was his argument there?
Textbook. You got it from a text. Your argument is a textbook.
All right. You got your textbook. Okay. John Sanford was Darwin didn't do experiments, right?
Can't trust Darwin because he did no experiments.
Darwin did no
asshole.
experiments. Yeah, how dare he? All right. Robert Carter had a couple, so what were they?
Robert
Mutation
Carter
equals
Stevens was here.
fixation.
Come on.
Mutation
It was
equals fixation. And
then Erica's wrong, but I won't say why.
Erica is wrong. Then we'll put in brackets. But I won't say why. Oh, nope, that.
So, and like on that one, since Dapper's just writing this down anyways, I want to note it was particularly strange because in a later video, Carter was like, hey, by the way, the reason why Erica's wrong is because, I couldn't replicate her results, which he couldn't, which that's fair. Like, I've discussed that in my video. But like, my question is, and I said this in my response, bro, why didn't you just say that? If you actually watched the video at that time and run your own tests, why didn't he just say Erica's wrong for a myriad of different reasons instead of saying, and I don't know why, or I won't get into that here, be like, because I couldn't replicate her results. Because he hadn't run the tests yet.
Yeah. All right.
And Dapper, did you get the SFT heat problem on that list too?
I did. I remembered the heat problem, so I didn't have to ask about it because it's fresh in my mind.
And also,
okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Am I remembering correctly that the thing that won worst argument last year was there's no evidence of excessive heat, therefore there's no heat problem? I think that won worst argument last year.
That was Donnie.
Which was also Donnie
last year.
Donnie's first OG argument.
Yeah.
It's the first thing he's ever come up with originally.
There's no evidence of heating.
There's no heat problem because we don't see evidence of heat.
Because we don't see evidence of heat.
I love that. That's like...
George Vaughn made the same argument in their most recent video. He goes, if there'd been excessive amounts of heat, all the granite would actually be rye. Like, yeah, George,
yeah, that's good. That's
right.
true. That is
you're
true.
right, actually.
Not wrong.
You're right.
So why is there granite and not as much rye? I don't know.
The only way I can respond to that is just significant looks. Like what else are you gonna do?
By the way, Finn, who's been a member for 6 months and is at the Amniote level, says, can you ask them all if they prefer limes or lemons? And have they had ripe limes? No. All right, TD, limes or lemons?
Quick.
I'm going to say lemons because I like lemonade.
Dan.
Limes.
Zach?
Lime.
Erica?
Lime.
It's lime most of the time for me, but there are some applications where it's lemon. All right, so we are now moving on to worst use of the English language, and we are starting with Erica.
Okay, so I'm staying like in our amateur zone for seemingly the first two arguments, but my vote for worst use of the English language specifically, and just because it's fresh on my mind, it's Sam of Redefined Living from the Standing for Truth channel, because every time this man opens his mouth to try to argue something, snarkily and rudely, mind you, and he's too scared to go on anybody else's channel, which I think really punctuates this entire theme.
Yeah.
But the most recent one to stick in my mind is that over and over again in an argument, like about nuclear decay, he said nuclear decay. And he said it in that condescending way that Sam tends to speak, where he's like, have you considered that in nuclear decay, we're making all this assumptions in nuclear decay.
Yeah. Every time you say that, it's like jabbing into my ear.
Can I, before we go further with the argument, can I just say something extremely mean? And it's this. I think Sam drives a giant ass pickup truck and never does anything more than pick up groceries in it. Can we all just agree that that's like 99?
That seems to be the kind of thing that's going on there. Yeah,
that's
100%.
Screw that guy. Hi, Sam. Yeah. Cheers.
Interestingly enough, the only time I ever drove regularly a giant pickup truck, it was a work truck, and I carried things like tools and giant copper bus pieces for electrical installations.
That's why you have a pickup truck.
Yeah.
Sam strikes me as the kind of guy that complains about not getting a trad wife online, but won't be a trad husband. Like, he also wants her to pay for half the check. That's what he kind of strikes me as. I don't like Sam. I realize I don't like him. I think that he's extremely arrogant. I think that he's extremely rude. And I think that he makes the Standing for Truth channel look even worse than it tends to look already by acting like that. And he's extremely biased as a moderator, too. I hope we can all appreciate that.
He jumps in to save the guest when they get off. He constantly jumps in to be like,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for mine, I think Sam very frequently, and so there's no shame in this, right? A lot of times you read a word and then you're like, you mispronounce it because you've only ever read it. And then when somebody who's used it regularly pronounces it, you're like, oh, okay, like that's how you do it. Nuclear is not one of those, right? Like that is not a word that I believe Sam has never heard. You know what I mean?
Yeah, probably not.
He does this with quite a few words. So that's Sam's going to be my nomination for that.
You little rascal for 10 Argentinian pesos says, Decker, why are we allowing all this prescriptivism? That's a good question. And that's because it's a joke. That is the entirety of the reason. I'm not actually a prescriptivist, but this is a joke, so it doesn't matter because none of this matters. This is literally just an excuse for a bunch of people to hang out, chat about all the dumb stuff creationists have got up to last year, and have a few drinks with friends. Yeah.
Saying nuclear makes you a morally bad person, and I will die on this hill.
All right, let's move on to Zach. Zach, who is your choice for the creationist who used the English language the worst in 2023, and what was the use that they are nominated for?
Yeah, so there's actually two usages. There's one main one, but I want to attach a second one. But this is for Paul Price, who used the word information but had no idea what it meant or was completely incapable of providing even the slightest definition of what it could possibly mean. And so it's a vacuous word.
I'll take a little credit for that. For that one.
Yeah, and of course this occurred on Dan's channel.
Which was amazing, by the way, when he just completely backed down from even attempting a definition.
Yeah, that was incredible.
Yeah, so the information, and then the amendment one that I want to add to it is mega beneficial from Kimura's paper, because to him Kimura invokes mega beneficial mutations, but the actual subheading for that part of the paper is slightly advantageous, which one might argue are two different meanings. So,
yeah, that does sound a little different.
And then slightly advantageous is like the other end of being beneficial.
No, it's basically the same. I'm hearing the same thing either way. I don't know.
So
I don't know.
Paul Price gets my
Zach,
nomination.
why are you being such a traditionalist when it comes to the word slightly?
Yeah,
we all know that the word.
You run it through Google Translate 20 times, it just comes out the same.
Yeah. All right. So those are some good options, and yeah,
that's a good one. The information was a really good one.
If you watching out there, any of you 112 people or so, not even half of which have hit like, which means of course I like less than half of you half as well as you deserve. So why don't you hit like so you don't get Bilbo'd again?
Hold on,
I actually had someone argue with me that it wasn't Bilbo, it was Frodo, because that's from the Lord of the Rings, and I'm like, come on, man, it's from Bilbo's birthday party. He says it.
Yeah.
Anyway, hit like out there. So I've lost my train of thought. Doesn't matter. We're going on to Dan. Dan, who is your choice?
All right.
For worst use of the English language?
My nominee for worst use of the English language is, I'm kind of cheating with this one because to be fair, my nominee could be nominated for this award literally every year since like 1996. My nominee is everybody affiliated with Discovery Institute for their repeated use of Darwinism and Darwinian. And it's like, my friends, that was from the 1860s. It is the 21st century. There are no Darwinists. That was natural variation and natural selection. That's what Darwinism is, right? That was obsolete by the 19-teens. Right? Mm-hmm. Once we knew vaguely how genetics worked, that's the end of strictly Darwinian evolution as a governing paradigm, right? Yeah, and then once you get to the 1940s, when the modern synthesis kind of matured, right? Now, forget about it. And now we're well beyond that with all.
You're gonna be way more New York when you say forget about it. You're gonna be forget about it.
Well, look, I can't look. I grew up in the town, one of the towns where they filmed The Sopranos. So, if you want me to lean into it, I can. But I've tried to suppress that accent.
Okay, but I want you to. I don't always need you to lean into it, but when you say forget about it, I do kind of need you to.
Fair. Okay.
Yeah, so let's get a good forget about it.
I can't really forget about it.
You can't do it while you're watching.
You can't just put me on the spot like that, man.
Dan's got some performance issues. All right, Rosina Keller for $4.99 says, hoping for grounded and orangutan. Yeah, that's fair.
Donnie gets orangutan right. I've heard him get it right. Come on, Kent.
An addendum, though, to what Dan said. There are people who describe themselves as Darwinists. You don't want anything to do with them because they are not cool.
Yeah, there is that.
So the last historical usage of the Darwinist were the biometricians in the early 1900s, the pre-Mendelian. So the people that were fighting with the Mendelians in the early 1900s, they were the last Darwinists. Right. The people that rejected Mendelian inheritance were the last Darwinists.
Which, for the record, the like key experiment that like got everybody on board with Mendelian genetics was, Zach, I'm going to be off possibly by a year. It was Thomas Morgan and the Fruit Flies, 1902, 1903, with the eye color. It was that was it. That was the end. Like at that point, everybody got on board with Mendelian genetics. That was it.
The Darwinists fought for a long time. There was some deep rooted. I have a whole video on this. If you check out my video, People's History of Darwinism. There's a whole.
What's the saying? Science advances one funeral at a time.
Yeah.
Like maybe what I should say is after Morgan in 1902, I want to say there were no new Darwinists. Everybody coming up after that was on board with Mendelian genetics. There was the people that were just clinging on, like Carl Pearson and Raphael Weldon, that they just would not let go. So anyway, my nominee is Discovery Institute for repeatedly and determinedly pretending, and pretending's not the right word because they're just dishonest hacks, acting as though the field of evolution has not advanced past like 1865.
Wait, does someone here have a video series in which they called a prominent member of the Discovery Institute a dishonest hack in the title?
No, I think somebody does.
Okay, might have been like Stephen Meyer is a dishonest hack or something like that. Someone might have. Go look that up when you're done here, guys.
It's so hard at this point, right? Like, you know, I think I speak for everybody on the panel when it's like you come into this, right? You start digging deep into like creationism of all stripes, whether it's YC, OEC, or like intelligent design. And it's like, okay, the majority of them are good faith actors, right? And like only a few of them are not, you know, and even in the professional sense, that's the mindset, at least that I came in, you know, in on. But the longer and longer I do this, the more I'm like, I'm having a really hard time seeing some of these guys with the degrees that they have, the training that they put on a pedestal, right? And it's like saying and doing the things that they say without like knowing better, you know? And if they know better, what does that make them? It's not a liar, right? Like that sucks. It sucks to say. But what else would that make them?
Yeah,
idiots. I hold to the ground that they're just dumb. Maybe I don't actually think they're liars. I think they are outside of.
I hope you're right. Zach.
We should have a whole like 2-hour debate about this because I'm totally on team liar.
Before we do that, I have a couple super chats I need to make sure that I get through because I don't want to, you know, cheat people. Pipplepunk, half dog, half canine, for $2 says praise the Prophet Darwin and Saint Mendel. Sarcasm. Yes. Good Do 3 for $2 says Dan is like Miles Morales. Can't do it on command.
No, you know what it is? No, because like I have never been. I will say this: I have never been self-conscious about my North. I grew up in North Jersey. For wasn't clear. I've never been self-conscious about my North Jersey accent until I had to say the word WATER in front of a room full of 500 people. All right. And I'm like, what? I can't make my mouth make a sound, right? Water. Yeah. So
you could say it like Kent Hovind, water.
Water. No, I think a conversation or even a debate about like, are they honest or are they dishonest? Are they honest and dumb or ignorant or are they dishonest and they know it?
Chat, get your triangle memes in right now.
I am willing to have this debate. I have strong opinions.
I'm willing to host it. If y'all want to host it, I will do it.
I go either way. It depends on the person for me. Like, there's no shot you're going to convince me that Jeffrey Tompkins is accidentally doing this stuff. Like, I believe Jeffrey Tompkins.
They all are. Well, they all know. Look, every credentialed creationist is a liar.
Zach, I'm just curious how much of it is like dissonance, though. You know,
we have to set something up.
It still makes them liars.
Zach, do you think every single PhD creationist is honestly an idiot, or do you think any of them might be liars?
Yep.
No, I think that some of them might be liars.
So do you think every single credentialed PhD creationist is a liar, and none of them are simply stupid?
Yes. Look, honest, informed, young Earth creationist, pick two. If you have a PhD in a biological field, you are informed. A PhD is a degree in learning things. That's what it is.
All right, so here can be the two positions.
That's what a doctor of philosophy is. It is a degree in learning things. If you have a PhD in the biological sciences and you are a young Earth creationist, you are a liar.
Tell us how you really feel, Dan.
radar.
So on the one side, we can have Dan who has to defend all of them are too smart and all of them are liars. And on the other hand, we can have Zach Hancock who just has to argue that the majority of them are simply stupid. He doesn't have to even show that all of them are too stupid. Just most of them.
Bring it.
Look, we'll go name by name, chapter and verse.
All right.
Here's what this asshole said. Here's how they should know better. They're lying.
I will say, I have repeatedly said on my channel, like, hey, if you want to convince me that John Sanford is making these mistakes because he's just too stupid, feel free to tell me why you think the inventor of the gene gun is a moron.
Right. You can't play this person is brilliant.
I think I can make an argument that he actually doesn't understand population genetics.
All right, though.
You can't
we do have to move on.
But here's the thing. We'll do this another time.
Yes.
But if you're going to play this person is the brilliant whatever, then one, they should know better, and two, they have the ability to learn better, and that is its own form of dishonesty.
Okay, well, we'll save those for the debate.
We'll save that for another 3-hour stream. Tune in whenever that happens.
It'll be another time.
No, it's going to be 5 hours, let's be real.
Jordan, you're up.
As the narrator of the Dark Crystal says, another time, another world. That's when that'll happen. It's a great movie, by the way. Go watch the Dark Crystal if you haven't seen it. Do it. Jordan, sorry. Go ahead.
Forever.
If anybody wants to see Dr. Dan say that evolution is wrong, 4322 in the stream. That's the time to clip it.
I just clipped that whole
So my nominee for worst use of the English language is Robert Carter. And it's his use of the word journal as an academic journal for answers in the ARG, the Answers Research Journal. And here's why I'm nominating for worst use of the English language, because he then immediately, in the same sentence, without even inhaling again, in the same breath, describes why the ARJ is not a journal, because he says you can't publish in it unless you're young Earth creationism. If you must subscribe to their philosophical beliefs to agree with their conclusions in order to even publish in this thing, then you're not an academic journal. And so that would be an incorrect use of the word.
Dude, Carter has been so, like, he's been much like a lot of the young Earth creationists that we engage with. He's being kind of dragged kicking and screaming into throwing Tompkins under the bus, because every video he's a little bit more willing to be like, okay, maybe he completely botched this in its entirety and at every level. But, like, you know, and like at one point when I commented, I was like, yeah, exactly. I was like, so, like, you know, are we going to be, like, as I had to do, like, are you willing to admit when you're wrong? And more importantly, correct your mistake. He's like, I will be, but I can't speak for Tom. Oh my God. That's the closest I've seen him get to being like, yeah, this dipshit over here won't own that. He's like completely like he's making them look bad. Like poor Carter. I actually feel bad for him because I know they're friends in real life. He said it as much. Okay, but like,
I want to give Carter some props, right? Because he did recently apologize for his attempt to release my real name to the public, which he failed to do. But he also did apologize for it, and I'm a big enough dinosaur to say, you know what? That's okay. And look, I know I caught a little bit of heat for forgiving Carter, because some people didn't think he was worth the forgiveness. And here's what I'm going to say to those people, because I know that it's a non-trivial fraction of the people who listen to me. I daily try to be a person who I like, and I don't always succeed. And being able to forgive in circumstances like this is a big part of me being a human or dinosaur whom I can like. And so, yeah, I'm going to go for it. You might be right. He might not deserve it. Doesn't matter. I'm still going to do it because I have to be able to like myself at the end of the night, or I'm not going to sleep. I'm tired. I need to go to sleep.
That's a good rule.
Yeah. I think Carter is close in some time. Like, I think sometimes when he gets on, like when he speaks, he gets kind of close to getting it, right? Yeah. Like, it's, you know, I don't know what percentage that is, but every now and again he can surprise you with what he says. And then you're like, how are you saying this here, this reasonable thing? And then 2 seconds later, either you act really sassy, which I think is fun. I don't mind a sassy.
I like sassy Carter. I think it's great.
Carter. I think he's a blast. And, you know, as we all talked about, Carter has fun with this. Yeah. He's having a blast.
He doesn't want to admit it.
He's having a ball.
He's going to sit there in his kayak and pretend cry while he's having a blast. Because you know what?
Right.
If you weren't having a blast, you wouldn't have done this in a kayak. Because there's no way you were in a mood to be brought down while you're sitting in a kayak, man.
Right.
Dude,
Yeah.
he eats those pauses up. When he's giving those presentations, he'll do these pauses, he'll look at the screen with that side at that 3/4 profile.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm just like, you're not fooling anyone. That's what I do. You're not fooling
good
me.
for him,
Hunter.
though, right? Good for
You can't
him.
play a player. You can't play a player.
You can't play a player. Like, I know exactly what you're doing. So, like, I think he gets really close. I don't hate Rob Carter. And I think that Rob Carter, if any creationist is guilty of cognitive dissonance, I think he falls into that for a lot of stuff. Not all of it. And we'll get to that later. But for a lot of stuff, I think he falls into that.
With the Tompkins thing, specifically with Rob Carter, this is not the first time this has happened for Rob Carter, but this is definitely an example of, I never expected the leopards to eat my face. Really, Rob? You associate with a bunch of pseudoscientific hacks and you don't expect them to make completely obvious errors again and again? Of course Tompkins is screwing this up. That's what your team does. This is like the vaccine thing from a few years ago when he was shocked that his audience was anti-vaxxers. Like, well, how did that happen, Rob?
He was shocked.
I don't know why they don't trust science. Like, who could have predicted this?
Who told them that scientists were all liars?
Exactly.
That I'm actually really offended by. Like, that really pissed me off in his video where he was like, I'm no threat to anyone. No, Rob,
No,
you're a
you
threat
are.
to
No, you're
everyone.
whole
When you
thing.
spend your entire career sowing mistrust in the foundations of biology, you do not have the right to be surprised when they turn and apply that to areas that you're like, oh my God, why did they? Like, come on. Seriously?
So you little rascal, for 100 Argentinian pesos, says, we all love a fun takedown with all its drama, but something I've always admired from both you and Erica is the amazing good faith you provide to your interlocutors. I mean, I try. And yeah, I know Erica does. Yeah. Look, here's the thing. I don't want to think bad things about people. I don't like doing it. But I'm forced to in many cases, and I'm not going to pretend that that's not what's happening. Right? If you force me to conclude that you must be a liar because I can't imagine how you're stupid enough, given your credentials, to not be a liar, I don't know what else to do but be honest about it. And it sucks because I really don't like doing that. I would really much prefer to treat everyone as if they're honestly mistaken and acting in good faith, but I just can't. Like, when you do things like say, Darwin didn't use any math in the origin of species, it's like, dude, did you hit Control F and type literally any digit and just check? You didn't. You just spouted a lie about Darwin for no good reason. Because who cares if Darwin did math in the origin of species? It doesn't matter, but you had to lie about it anyway. And so, yeah, I mean, I wish I could be nicer to them. If anything, I'm too nice to them. All right, Jordan, did we get through your, was that yours that we just did? Yep. Okay, TD, do you have a worse use of the English language?
I would like to nominate Robert Byers.
Okay.
So I'm going to need to read this.
Okay.
In quotes here, I am creationist. Whales did change body plans from land lovers to seam lovers. All this after the flood. In organized creationism, it's now being introduced that marine mammals aren't a special case. They really were breathing, milking, licky critters first. They were on the ark. Still, organized creationism generally says that were made on Creation Week, but correction is coming. In fact, the vestigial butts and pieces of whales, etc., are the rare examples of creatures with these leftovers. Otherwise, biology is vacant of such nits when, if evolution was true, they should be drawing with them. Instead, they don't exist because evolutionism is a dumb myth. How whales changed body plans is not from evolutionary processes, but innately triggering evolution.
Okay, you gotta stop. My head's gonna implode if you keep going. I'm just.
Was he drunk?
No, that's just Robert. That's just Byers. That's just how he
it's
writes.
Robert Byers on Reddit.
buyers get like drunk and start playing around on debate evolution. Like, is that?
No, that's
just him. That's just
our point.
That's his
That's
real
the
self.
end. There were so many periods. Oh.
Jeez.
Anyway,
For anyone who doesn't know, Robert Byers is a Reddit user who hangs out on r/debate evolution and r/creation. And what TD Lane just read is more or less representative of his long posts.
Why don't I remember all of like the weird, like? Why don't I remember
You
that
blocked it
Byers
out
wrote
because
like
of
that?
trauma.
And that must have been it. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of my mental real estate is taken up by Mike Enders. To be fair, like,
I
as
used
far
to
as like
Also a classic.
Predator.
legible versions. And I remember why I stopped doing that.
All right, so that is the worst behaved. I have put in the chat a link to the poll for that.
Nope, that was worse.
Oh, worst use of English language. Yep, worst behaved is next.
Sorry.
Sorry, I look. Dapper's a professional. I'm taking a drink. That's one of my drink triggers now. Is Dapper's a professional?
oh,
Yep. Yeah, Erica, you got to come back on at some point for a drinking stream because we have updated our drinking rules considerably.
oh God, is it even more dangerous than it was?
I mean, it depends on how you pace yourself, right?
Yeah, not well. Not well. I'm not known
Okay,
for
but
that.
you're
I'm
normally
not known
drinking
for
White Claws though, so you're playing it safe already.
that. No, it's true, but I end up drinking so many White Claws. Like, so many. Like,
Well, I mean, I'm right now drinking a 12.5 ABV margarita, so like, oof.
oh, that's nice though. With the prickly
is.
pear?
No,
Are you
this,
incorporating the prickly pear?
this one is mango. Prickly pears aren't really in season right now, so like I can't really find any. I could find like really old, probably well overripe ones if I wanted to go out into the wild, but I don't because they're probably gross at this point. Although actually, in the yard here, a prickly pear did start growing a few years ago, and it's getting close to the point where I think it might flower soon, which of course means it might fruit soon. So, whoa. I am crossing my fingers as if I could possibly do that with my silly dinosaur hands for that for that particular plant to go get laid and start reproducing.
Do it. Also, I want to make a specific note. I did not need to hunt for that Byers post.
No, you
I
just
literally
look it up.
opened up all the flash, debate evolution,
Buyers.
hit the new post, scrolled the bottom.
Yep.
1 hour.
All right, so this is worst behaved. TD, do you have a pick for worst behaved?
I'm going to nominate Robert Carter for that. I don't know if you used this in your video because I will admit I haven't watched your video on Robert Carter, your most recent one, Erica, because it's been saved to do with the boyfriend. But
Nice.
it was that whole exchange that I got access to for back channels, where it was just like the sassy bitch.
he can get a little messy sometimes.
Yeah.
Carter can. Like he and what's so interesting is like it's so clear that most creationists are fine to just ignore the criticism, but like Carter it hurts Carter. Like when he gets busted up, he personally is pissed off. Like still in my mind, the first time a creationist organization ever referenced me as an individual was when he got pissed at me and Dan and decided to do a full-on like gigantic post on it. That's when he tried to dox you exactly. And like I'll never forget like the tone because I went back and reread it recently.
Oh man,
he is so sassy in that thing.
Yeah, it was like the smugness.
Sassy.
Yeah,
he was so pissed about that.
Come on,
Just pissed. And like it kind of got me thinking, and I'm like, oh, okay, like this is what Rob looks like when he's not on camera and not trying to hold himself back. Like when he's had a glass of wine, he's reclining in the evening, and he's like, you know what? Screw those guys. Like I'm coming after him on Rob Carter from CMI. Here it comes. What did he say to you, Dapper? He's like, okay, buddy, here it comes.
Something like that, yeah. Jeez.
I'm sorry, Dr. Carter, please. Take it easy.
Oh man,
this is a learning experience.
Well,
Doctor, can I just take this opportunity since we're just having a moment with Rob? Rob, I would love to have you on the channel. I would once again like to extend my hand in friendship to you.
Rob,
so I would love to have you on as a guest to have a non-confrontational conversation with you. Consider it.
So
Sorry,
while
Rob.
Dan is extending the hand of friendship, I am slapping Dr. Carter by nominating. I am also nominating him for worst behaved.
Rob, no.
And so my nomination is the thing that TD did for worst argument. I considered it for worst argument. It is the Erica is wrong, but I will not say so. I have an explanation. It lives in Canada. You wouldn't know it.
Yeah, you wouldn't know it.
Yeah, it's super hot though. And I put it here because that's not actually an argument.
True.
That's just you making an assertion. And so in the interest of accuracy, I think it's just being a shitty person. And so maybe a little bit of misogyny going on, perhaps. I don't know.
So, like,
on the internet?
I'm going to say to that, I think Rob tried his best to be, like, appropriate. I really do. At least he wasn't like Tompkins. Like, you want to talk about misogyny, Tompkins was like some girl on the internet. Some girl did this. And it's like, man, seriously, Jeff? Like, you're that mad about it? But then again, Jeff must live under a rock where where none of these criticisms can reach him, or he's living in a constant state of agony.
Don't worry. Don't worry. We'll get there.
Look,
we'll get there to Tompkins.
All I know about women is that they have a brain half the size of ours, and that their menstruation attracts bears, which puts the entire office in danger.
Which is science.
It's science.
Okay, Ben Shapiro.
I'll say too to Rob, like, again, he got around to being like, hey, here's what Erica got wrong. Now, to make something abundantly clear, the gapped ungap thing was an incomplete answer. He missed out on the max HSPS equals 1 thing. And then it turned out that my mistake was actually what Tompkins did do in 2 other alternative methodologies.
Okay.
So, like,
but as a counterpoint to that, though, while he did eventually come around to doing good things, he got there dragging his feet the whole way.
He had to be forced there by us.
He did it as lazily as possible, always putting in the minimal effort while putting out the maximum sass.
Guys, do you realize that this panel right here can play Robert Carter's channel like a fiddle? All we have to do is release the right video, and he will get all butthurt and have to release a response.
I noted this sometime in the last month or 2. I actually noticed Rob Carter's YouTube channel, Biblical Genetics. Basically, this group of people collectively has dictated the content of that channel for over a year.
As well as which videos get views.
That channel has been almost entirely either genetic entropy related, mutation and substitution rate related, or blast human chimp similarity related for most of the last 14 to 16 months. And that is this, plus our friends and acquaintances who are not in this stream, but who we also collaborate and interact with. We rent free in Rob Carter's head, and it's getting a little crowded up there, and I wish there was a little more leg room, but we are just all hanging out.
Well, and it's so interesting, right? Because Rob will meticulously do these deep dives when he thinks he has a point to get one over on one of us, right? But on the stuff that he's clearly been kind of busted up on, for instance, Dan, he hasn't really touched the Out of Africa stuff since we did the response to the response, at least not that I've seen.
And before that, me and Just a Walking Fish did a long video specifically on his here's how to explain out of Middle East thing. And we went through his 6 bullet points and specifically showed how multiple combinations are contradictory with each other. And he has not touched that stuff. Outside, to be fair, he repeated the same talking points in the Dismantled documentary. But outside of that, he's not touched that stuff. So
the thing about that, too, though, is that in the very first response that he did to me on the Tompkins stuff, he said, and I know these characters, these nefarious, evildoers, Dan and Erica, I know them, and Dapper Dino, I know them. They're so spooky and mean. And it's he's and they, responded, they had some things to say about that, and maybe I'll get around to talking about that eventually, but for now, and it's no,
it's the
Rob,
only thing you talk about.
I don't think you will. I don't think you'll get around to talking about it, because there's as you said, Dan, when the points are contradictory to one another, what do you do? What do you test? They're internally inconsistent.
You make the argument loudly and confidently, and then you never mention it ever again in your life.
You're forgetting. Premise 1, I'm correct.
Well, you see,
therefore,
A. A.
Therefore, A.
All right, so Dan, what do you got? Who's your pick?
All right, my pick. So here's a little behind the scenes for everybody. I also originally was going to nominate Rob Carter for this, for the exact same thing that Jordan came up with, of that, like, Erica's wrong, but I'm not going to say why. We're just going to leave it. I'm just going to talk for another hour and not say anything, or however long that video was.
20 minutes.
But you know what? I think Rob he's been nominated for every category. I think he's been nominated for every category.
Mm-hmm.
Was he nominated for worst use of English language?
I can guarantee you has been
He's
or will be nominated for every
so far.
category.
Okay,
Don't worry.
Good. So, you know what? I want to make sure that everybody gets recognized for their awful behavior. So, related to this, but different, I am nominating Dr. And for reasons I talked about before, I like to emphasize the titles and qualifications, Dr. Jeffrey Tompkins. Because he's the guy who did this original analysis. And a lot of people have tried to replicate his analysis and have submitted papers to Answers Research Journal explaining the issues with his analysis and showing why they're wrong. And not all of these people are not young Earth creationists, because as anyone who's been following this knows, Dr. Rob Carter has, not as forcefully or loudly as he's criticized Erica, but he has acknowledged that Tompkins screwed up in a bunch of ways.
Yep.
But you know who hasn't said a GD word about any of this?
Tompkins.
Jeffrey Tompkins.
Well, except for that time he called Erica some girl.
Except for that time he disparagingly referred to Erica. And that is as close as we've gotten to a response on any of this stuff from Tompkins. And it's his work that is kind of forming, like, that's the point of this whole conversation. And Tompkins is completely MIA. Mm-hmm. And you know what? You want to, like, cosplay being a scientist, doing real peer-reviewed science, you have to, like, participate in the conversation. If you're not willing to do that, you're just faking it. So you know what?
So,
real quick, for
Tompkins
$5, Pibblepunk, half dog, half canine, says, but you guys, Rob is just a little guy, and it's his birthday. He's a little birthday boy.
Little guy.
Well, happy birthday, Rob Carter. Good job, little Bobby. You made it another trip around the sun.
The thing about the Tompkins situation, right, is like, and I don't know how hard I can stress this. I don't think there's a way to, like, emphasize how important this point is. Tompkins screwed up in multiple different ways across multiple different years, sometimes in multiple ways within the same paper, to give the illusion that methods corroborated one another. I find it so hard. Right. To what we were saying earlier, right? Like in the case of Tompkins, I can't get my brain around that being an accident. Having looked in depth into his Nookmer, his Lassie, his blast analysis in 2011, 2013, 2015, 2016, and 2018. It is so hard, you guys, to do this by accident. Like, blast is finicky already. It's hard to do it in Lassie. It's hard to do it in Nookmer. It is impossible to do it in all three in such a way as to get them to corroborate one another and converge on a single answer, at least as far as I can tell. I don't think there's a shot that was an accident, but that's just my opinion.
Real quick, Savage Geological Species Concept Cobra for $2 says, Dr. T is a bag of preappulids, and we're going to take a drink for that.
Oh, damn. I'm out of...
Cheers.
Out of booze.
Oh, go get more booze. I've got like 3 more.
We can't see you. You could have just...
All right, give me a minute.
Yeah.
I like how we all hit that one. That was good. Good job, everybody.
Yeah.
We're on the same page.
That was Jeffrey Tompkins from Dan. So, Zach, we are back to you.
Yeah, so this one is a little depressing.
Uh-oh.
I am nominating Sal Cordova as the worst behaved, and I'm going to tell you why, and it's pretty sad. I don't know if you watched the Sal-Rebecca breakup video, where Sal decided that he was no longer going to do videos with Rebecca because of her support of the LGBT community. And it was maybe the saddest thing I've ever seen in my life, and I've maybe never been more disappointed with a creationist just like You have no soul. You have no heart. You are just a garbage human being. And I was so moved by it. I literally emailed Rebecca afterwards and was like, that was the worst thing I've ever seen. I'm sorry that Sal Cordova is such a shithead.
It was so hard to watch, man. Because Rebecca's just being so gracious about the whole thing. And there's Sal, who's just like, no, if you're not as big an asshole to LGBTQ people, I just can't talk to you. It's like, geez, Sal.
Well, it's like watching a self-immolation too, right? Because Sal was hurt. Like the way Sal was speaking, you could tell he felt like he knew what he was saying was hurtful. He knew what he was saying was heartless and just lacking in any sort of compassion. And Rebecca was so confused. She was like, why are you doing this? Like, we're friends. Why would you do this? And that made me really sad too. Yeah, that's...
Yeah, that
just gutted me.
What got me
completely gutted me.
It was
why is this a video? Like why are we seeing this?
Yeah, that's a really good question.
The world seeing this?
That's a great question.
Yeah, why was that not a private phone call?
Why do I know this happened?
Yeah,
and I can't think of very many well-intentioned reasons for that. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
No, exactly. It's like I want to put a show on. Like I want to. Not only are we going to part ways, but I want to get viewership for it. Right? It's gonna be this like fun thing that people are gonna watch and enjoy the drama.
It was
this,
the opposite of fun, man. That was so hard to watch.
But like,
and I also think there's and look, just to full disclosure, my history with Sal is we hated each other back in our Reddit days, and Erica knows way back in the day, right? We used to really go after each other on Reddit. And then once one of my first things I ever did on YouTube years ago was a debate with Sal about genetic entropy. And then following that debate, we talked a bunch and we became friends. And like, it's harder. Like, you can't just be a jerk to somebody when you're talking to them face to face or on video like a couple times a year. Like, you can't just be an asshole to somebody all the time. Like, it's it's like humanity makes it hard. Like, you can't do that. And so like, and for a while Sal, he wrote some like wrong but I think very genuinely interesting things that were like, he was really trying to lean into the science side of things, and not be that like kind of combative, like on the internet, like debate bro kind of persona. And then I don't know what happened. I mean, I have some ideas, but like he just kind of flipped and it became very confrontational and like my way or the highway.
Yeah.
And it hurts more because like, Zach, I don't know what your history with Sal Cordova is but it hurts more. I don't want to minimize how you felt about it, but like, personally, that was very painful for me to watch because it felt like he was throwing away several years of built up goodwill, trying to undo some very ill will that had built up prior to like 2020 or so. And he had, trying to like, what? I'm going to change how I do things. I'm going to try to like have conversations and like, I can disagree, but we can still be like cordial. And like, because how can you say Rebecca is no longer my friend because of this, and this, but then still consider like me a friend because Sal, let me tell you, the problem with Rebecca.
I met Sal. So I kind of like had some conversations with Sal after he put out like a repudiation of Kent Hovind. After like all the news came out that they were like harboring this child abuser, and so Sal like came out against that, and I contacted Sal and I was like, and I was like, that's really big of you to like come out against this creationist, though you're on the same team, like whatever, like that was really big of you. And we had like several conversations. He invited me to like review a book chapter he was working. So like we started off with like this kind of cordial conversation. He seemed like a really cool guy. And then I came on a stream with Dapper and like, he then like, just like, went crazy afterwards. Like he ended up like starting a stream while we were still streaming, supposedly responding to us, but like having clearly never watched it, right? And just like spouted off complete nonsense. And then he did like several follow-up streams.
There is a reason that directly above your head, there is a timer called Sal's Bitchmade timer that says 285 days, 8 hours, 18 minutes, and 59 seconds.
Yeah. And so like, and then it was just like this kind of like downward spiral from then. And then to me, like the clear point, I was like, all right, Sal isn't a nobody to me anymore. Was the Rebecca thing.
It really is depressing. Also, Goop23 for $2 says gay rights and trans rights with the rainbow emoji. And yes, absolutely.
Yes.
This is part of a trend among not all young Earth creationists, but a subset of young Earth creationists. And to a large degree, this is like the Ken Ham thing of like that you have to agree with us on everything or you're out. And so the problem with that, in addition to alienating a bunch of your audience, as a couple of you have said already tonight, is that you end up with this positive feedback loop of extremism where every possible position you could hold becomes a litmus test for being in the club. Yeah. So you end up with, like, instead of associating with Rebecca, who, like, yes, she's a young earther and has all these positions that I personally think are wrong, right? And that, like, empirically, as far as we can tell, are wrong.
Yeah, I was going to say, Dan, you have to say I personally. They're verifiably demonstrably
fair enough. I'm trying to be as generous as possible, right? But, like, but also she turns around and says, but you know what? Kind of the overarching message of the New Testament is to treat everybody as though, you know, they're your brother, so to speak, and, like, be respectful and, you know, good to everybody. Mm-hmm. And then you've got Ken Ham and that kind of mindset of, like, no, there are people who are bad, not because of what they do, but because of who they are, right? And we need to treat them as though they are bad for that very reason. And you get this self-reinforcing loop. So instead of associating with people like Rebecca, you end up having Sal associate with people like Emery Moyna / Harry F. Sanders III, who is, before he deleted his YouTube and Rumble channels, was like, you know, like, the FBI is going to knock on your door.
Look,
right?
I'm
like,
still waiting for him to appear on the news as the latest person who did a mass casualty violent attack, which I'm going to try and couch in those terms because you all know what I mean. But if I say it, YouTube might shut us down.
It's
sort of bluntly
the thing.
Great.
Here is, like, Jesus boiled everything down to two rules. You have two things you have to do. One of those things is to love other people. Mm-hmm. And yet, they're two things, and they still can't get it right. And if you, like, bring you back to the Sal thing, if you just looked at Sal's behavior and Rebecca's behavior, and then compared it to Jesus's two rules, it is clear which one of them is following them, and it ain't Sal.
So I'd like to use this as a jump-off point for my nomination.
We have to go in order, though. Is this the next in order?
She's the next.
Just making sure. Look, I've had a fair bit of margarita, so I'm having trouble keeping track.
I would never violate the order, please.
I wouldn't accuse you of doing so intentionally.
Rules except the order.
There's no rules except the order. I can fill the order. So my nomination
quick, though, I just have to do a super chat. Savage Geological Species Concept Cobra says for $2, Sal is also a large bag of preappulates, and I'll take a drink. Thank you very much. Sorry, go ahead.
My nomination is Ken Ham. My nomination is Ken Ham, and why I'm nominating him is for a big subject, for a big thing I'm doing a video on right now, and it's for hosting the Idaho Christchurch cult and the Fight, Laugh, Feast convention, which, by the way, like, outside of the regular rigmarole of, you know, homophobia and transphobia and things like that everyone here would be like, oh my God, that's absolutely awful. This cult also condones things like husbands engaging non-consensually with their wives, right? And keeping women barefoot and pregnant in the house, not holding any kind of leadership position really in any portion of the community, not holding jobs. There's racial undertones to some of what they do.
Polite way of putting it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm trying to keep things, like, SEO friendly here, right? Like, without saying, like, exactly what's going on, right?
Appreciated.
But, like, what's going on with this church?
Supremacist?
Yeah, exactly, right? I mean, they're trying to turn their local town into a theocracy, and very specifically a theocracy with specific archetypal people in mind.
Okay, I have a very specific question, actually.
Okay.
Or do they also do, like, fear mongering about the J's and the M's coming to take over and enforce religious law? Okay, cool.
Now I want to point something out. If you are someone who's thinking, oh yeah, but, you know, the separation of church and state is something that's pretty well enforced in the United States, and I don't think that they could realistically take over a town to make it into a theocracy. I just want to point out, that the fundamentalist Latter-day Saints managed to take an entire town in Nevada and turn it into a theocracy in which every single member of the police department was part of the cult and were allowing the statutory and otherwise assaults on little girls, but I mean little girls, to take place routinely, and it only ended a few years ago. Do not think that that's an impossibility. They can do
in that linebacker, the current leader of the convention, the man that Cunningham had speak at the Ark Encounter, the actual man that came and spoke there, defended legally an individual who had engaged in assault of a minor, of a young girl. And like, this is like, he hosted them and spoke with them and shared a stage with them. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, you want to talk about Christ-like attitudes, right? You want to talk about embodying the golden rule. This is about as far from it as you can get.
Yeah. I do want to... Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, to top this off, right? Like, it's... You know, we clown on younger creationists, and we talk about some of the ideas that they hold that are clearly awful and heartless, right? But then there's like taking those ideas and like even dialing those up to 11. That's who Cunningham hosted.
Yeah.
It is unacceptable on every level what went down there.
I just want to make a quick caveat that the FLDS is not associated with the main body of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has repeatedly emphasized the degree to which they are not associated with this group and reject their various unique teachings and practices. So I just want to make it clear out there that I am not trying to paint the entire Mormon movement with this brush. This is a particular group within that, and because I don't think that all of the nuances within that, you know, the varied groups that call themselves LDS or Mormon, like, it's not everyone is aware that there's a lot of variation in there, and so I just want to make that clear. That is not me saying anything about the LDS mainline church there, which, yeah, I shouldn't call it mainline, but whatever, we're getting over that.
I just want to piggyback on this theme for a minute, because it is kind of a really important overarching theme of what we do here, because we've all to varying degrees received feedback of like, why do you care about the young earth creationists? Like, why do they matter? Right? Like, no one actually, like, who cares?
Yeah.
Right? They don't have any influence in like science. So like, who cares if someone thinks the world is 6,000 years old? And this is the reason, right? This is why, because young earth creationism is part of the broader Christian nationalist project, right?
The current Speaker of the House of the United States.
I was just going to say, like, Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House of Representatives of the United States of America, has an author page on the AIG website, okay? Like, this is a guy who is 100% on board with this movement. So if you want to talk about things like prayer in school, political and policy objections to any efforts to address climate change, let us not forget that the private school movement, the reason for that was because private schools could be segregated, right? Private religious schools could be segregated, right? For a longer time than public schools. Like, all of these projects are the same project at the heart. It's the Christian nationalist the Christian nationalist white supremacist project. It is all one thing. And when we address young earth creationism, what we're trying to do is stop people from falling down the slippery slope. Because oftentimes young earth creationism, the religious thing, this is what my community does and thinks and is involved in thing, is the first step to all of these other political things. And like, a really great example of this is access to abortion, right? That did not become a thing when Roe versus Wade happened. That was a conscious decision among this movement several years later, because they saw we can jump in on this and use this as a rallying cry. And if you think they are content with the Dobbs decision, let me tell you, you are wrong. If you pay attention to what AIG says and what Speaker of the House Mike Johnson says and what all these other conservative groups say about this stuff, they're coming for in vitro fertilization next. They're coming for birth control next. They're coming for barrier methods of contraception next. Like, that is coming, right? If you get a trifecta.
I want to point something out about Christian theology and abortion. The traditional view of when a soul enters a baby and therefore killing it is in fact murder is not conception in Christianity. The traditional view was the quickening, which is when a baby starts doing things like kicking and responding to sound from external sound. That is actually the traditional view in Christianity as to when an embryo, a human embryo, becomes a person, quote unquote. Now, granted, that would ban certain abortions, which I would say many people would prefer be legal. But it is certainly not
a relatively small number.
A relatively small number. It would not ban the vast majority. The vast majority of abortions occur long before that happens. And if we were to adopt that as the actual Christian view that is politically acceptable in Christianity today in the United States, for the most part, abortions would be almost unaffected. Only a very small portion of people who want abortions would be barred if that were the rule that Republicans went with. And that is the traditional view in Christianity, is this at the so-called quickening.
I'm so curious to with this, because we've watched a lot of the, all of us in this group have access to the uploaded talks, the Fight Left Feast talks, right? And we have access to their website and the kind of videos that they post. And it's really interesting because when they have a woman who's speaking, the audience is all women. They don't allow women to speak to men, even if they're in the audience, or at least it doesn't seem like it.
Hey, they have to keep their hair covered and stay silent.
Well, I'm wondering how the likes of Georgia Purdom, what does she think? What was that conversation like? Cunningham invites this
honestly,
group to speak, and she's on their staff. There's a lot of women on their staff.
Gabriella Haynes too.
Gabriella Haynes, right? How do they react when their boss is we're welcoming into our doors these allies who think that you shouldn't be able to do what you do?
What's that 20-something-year-old Canadian woman's name? She's on Answers News a lot.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. I don't know.
Yeah, she got curly hair.
Yeah,
I know exactly who you're talking about. Yeah, she's actually she's
Paul probably knows.
She kind of like her. She's got a nice presence on the show. She's always kind of
I was going to say the same thing. I think she seems quite nice, but what they're doing on the Answers News, they couldn't do that in Christchurch. They're speaking sharing the stage with, and speaking to men in the audience. They wouldn't be able to do that at the church that they hosted. I don't understand that.
Yeah.
So what I think it is, I think it's just as simple. Well, that'll never happen to me. Ken Ham wouldn't do that. I've talked to him. I know him. So we agree with these people on a lot, but that's not going to happen to me. We're not going to go that far.
Those leopards,
because the leopards will never eat my face.
Exactly.
I want to make a very specific.
Oh, it's point. Patricia Engler points out Peter. Thank you very much, Peter, from Paleologos.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter.
Sorry to Patricia for not remembering your name, even though I usually think that you're one of the nicest and most entertaining presence on Answers News when I bother to watch that. So, sorry, Patricia.
Yeah. I want to make a very specific point here, which is that this group Ken Ham hosted is very much the equivalent of hosting NSDAP. It's not a very good look for AIG. They should never have been associated with this group.
Well, it's not even
they would have hosted the NSDAP if they were in the 1930s in Germany. They would have.
Yeah.
They didn't just host them. Ken Ham shared a stage and spoke to their people, people who came to their convention, right? And I find that really, that's tough to grapple with. I would imagine that'd be tough to grapple with. If you're Georgia Purdom, if you're Gabriella Haynes, right? If you're Patricia, if you're seeing this guy who has elevated your presence, shared a stage with you, whatever, and you're hosting this group that, would happily see you're relegated kind of to the shadows. I find that very dark.
Yeah.
I would, if I can quickly just piggyback on what Dan was talking about in terms of why we do this and why it's important for us to do this. As a population geneticist, I engage a lot with race realists. I have a video on race realism, and it's a huge topic right now that it's I don't know how familiar you are with the movement, but it's a very big movement that has surprising support from several swaths of just the general, both scientific and public community. And
Sam Harris,
and Jerry Coyne, and so it's whenever you engage with these people, you find a remarkable amount of overlap between the way they talk and the way they understand science and creationists. And in fact, very often those two are very closely allied positions. And The same thing is true if you're talking about biological sex. All of these things like have important overlaps in terms of like science literacy and understanding how we do science. And I think creationism is like one of the key ways in which you can like get your foot into the door of science denialism. And then if you can accept that little bit of science denialism, then you can deny, what you can deny a whole lot.
But Zach, biological sex is binary except for the exceptions.
Except for the exceptions.
Yeah,
because that's how binary works.
It's fundamentalism. Ultimately, it's fundamentalism.
Yeah.
And while I want to be clear, not every young Earth creationist holds these views or are like these people we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, Rebecca exists.
Right. Yeah, Rebecca exists.
Sure.
Like Rebecca, for example, right?
But
like
the problem is that when you embrace fundamentalist views, you have to segment things, and it allows you have to buy into like, this is what the evidence is. I am rejecting this evidence for this thing I prefer. And once you can do that once, you can be persuaded to do it again.
Yep.
And I know exactly what it's like. I used to be a fundamentalist young Earth creationist, so I know how insidious it can be.
That's a good question. Okay, so I was a young Earth creationist. Jordan was. I know Erica was. Is anyone else on the panel a former young Earth creationist? Zach, that's 4. So the majority of this panel are former
4 out of 6.
Yeah, former young Earth creationists.
That's amazing.
And actually, I noticed that a lot. There's a lot of people like if you look at like YouTube people who were into this thing, like Paul Enns from Pawnswizard, former young Earth creationist. You look at even Aaron Ra was at one point like adjacent in his like spiritual journey. He was a fundamentalist Christian for a little while.
I think stated clearly, John Perry was a I think.
I don't know if he was a young Earth because he was a Mormon, so he probably was an old Earth creationist because they tended not to go into the young Earth thing.
You're probably right.
But still, that's right next door. There's a whole lot of people here on the YouTube in like the space of countering young Earth creationism who are former young Earth creationists, and I think a lot of it is. Yeah, Vice Rhino. I don't know if I mentioned him. Vice Rhino was also a young Earth creationist. I don't like having been lied to for decades. It's a big part of why I started this channel. Because remember, I mean, this channel might be the thing that I do like with an absurdly high portion of my time nowadays. But it wasn't always. It started out as just something because I was like, young Earth creationists kind of annoy me. I wish there was more content about that. And then I realized I can take Gandhi's advice and be the change I want to see in the world.
Yeah, I literally went from a young Earth creationist to an evolutionary biologist.
Right.
Like
that's quite the swing right there.
Yeah, I mean, like I started doing this because I had a coworker who was a young Earth creationist, and he wanted to have these conversations all the time, and I found myself saying a lot of stuff. Like the example I always give is like radiometric dating, right? Like I'd bring it up, and I'd be like, well, how can you be young Earth creationist, like radiometric dating? And he was like, well, look at all the assumptions. And I was like, shoot, okay, well, like why do I know the things that I know, right? And so I started putting a lot of time into understanding the concepts that I was touting, and then, being able to formulate them into actual coherent arguments, specifically coached in like the concept, or couched rather in like the concept of like debunking young Earth creationism. And then it was like, okay, well, I've put in all this work. I don't want everybody to have to put in all this work, so I'll put it online,
The funny thing is, there's a particular youth group leader whom I can point to and say, you are the reason that I ever bothered investigating this stuff and the reason I'm doing this today. Because she decided that what we should do in our youth group was have a creation evolution debate. But of course, none of the youth group was on the pro-evolution side because we were all young Earth creationists, because it was a church youth group at a YUC church. But she was like, hey, she called me Tim, right? Everyone knows my name is Tim. It's not a secret. Tim, would you be okay with taking the evolution side? I know you don't accept it, but you're also smart and you can think on your toes, and like you can look this stuff up, and you can probably make it was a big mistake. And the biggest mistake though was when I went on, and I had pretty basic arguments, right? Like I had like a week to research this crap. But the thing that really got to me was the reception I got from my, audience, which is, people I consider friends, and they were like screaming at me and heckling the crap out of it. And I'm like, dude, I'm just being asked to play devil's advocate here.
I just did my homework. Don't get mad at me.
Yeah.
And so the thing I thought was like, why is the response to this just anger? Why isn't there a better response to this? And so I started looking more into it, because I was like, if the best response that everyone has is just to be mad at me, That's not a good response. And look,
Right.
I'm going to be fair. There were other things at that church that were going on that I was like, this doesn't seem to make any sense. And it was a cause for a whole lot of different changes in my like religious outlook, my scientific outlook, a whole bunch of things. But that is the point I can pinpoint as the thing that flipped that switch where I was like, okay, I'm going to look into this. And then I went to Talk Origins.
Oh,
Wow.
Because it was the 90s. It was the 90s.
That brings me back.
It was in the 90s.
Hey, many of us.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
You know when
Oh, yeah.
I get emails every now and again from people, and they're like, do you know of anything that's like a new version of Talk Origins? I was like, I can give you about 8 channels that are the equivalent of the modern
But
version.
also, like, 90% of Talk Origins is still up to date.
Look,
a lot of
Because
it.
the arguments haven't gotten any better.
Look, just the most recent video I uploaded, I was like, well, since Pam, I was talking about some woman named Pam, is going to reach back to like the 1960s for her talks about evolution and speciation, I'm going to reach back into the deep lore of the internet and look at a 1995 article from Talk Origins to counter it. Because
There you
what
go.
do I care?
Still does it.
It actually blows my mind. The one that kills me is the coal, the diamonds, and the dinosaur, the carbon found in all of those, right? Like that has multiple articles on Talk Origins. All of that is still applicable, and I still see new articles coming out from all of the younger creationist sources: CMI, ICR, AIG, right? Not New Creation blog. I don't think I've seen it on New Creation blog, but maybe I just haven't looked.
They're better
But
than
it's
most.
like, yeah, they're still using the arguments, and it's like, okay, like, but they're doing the Donnie Deals fallacy. It's the same argument
Yo.
without being like, here's why those refutations don't work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we can still have this conversation, but you have to address the criticism. That's so important.
CMI literally just in the past week did a coal thing.
Awesome.
Like, what year is it? You're doing the coal thing? Is it 1990? Like, what?
They're
Doesn't
doing the
matter.
throwbacks.
Yeah, we're just bored. We're bored this week. We're just
You know
gonna
how
do
they,
it.
they think that science updating its ideas and taking on board new evidence is a bad thing?
Yes,
Because
I
they
do know
don't.
that.
They're like,
Yeah,
hey,
right.
what about this thing that was debunked 40 years ago? What if we bring it up again?
Matt just said in a live stream, he was like, it's, they're just mad because their science is always changing. My brother, that's the best part about science. The fact that it can change and accommodate new information. That's its greatest
Okay,
strength. That's so cool.
Here's something about Raw Matt, though. Remember when I said, when you were talking about Rupe, and you said that, he showed a picture of the foramen magnum of
He did
Ardipithecus
that too.
ramidus?
Yeah.
Raw
With
Matt,
the
in an
teeth,
article
yeah.
that he put up on his own website, had,
Mammal brain.
Yeah.
what was it? It was a synapsid. Which one was it? Probainignathus, right? He said Probainignathus didn't have molars. And on the same site was a picture of a Probainignathus mandible with molars.
I think I remember this. I think we were
He's
looking
also
at it
done-
together, Dapper.
He's
Yeah, I
also
just
done
broke.
every element in the universe comes from uranium decay,
Yep.
while having a uranium decay chart next to him, notably missing most of the elements of the
Most
universe.
elements.
Remember
We could
this
do a
thing
whole-
about
we could do a
all
whole
uranium
Cambrian
is
bunnies
lower?
thing. We could do a whole Cambrian bunnies thing just on Raw Matt arguments. Like, Raw Matt is not allowed because he would win worst argument and worst use of the English language every
time,
Every
year.
time.
And worst behaved.
And probably worst behaved.
All right,
He would win. Oh, yeah. His personal YouTube channel is hilarious. It's all just like,
Okay.
I just want to take a
It's
moment,
all-
though, to give thanks to the almighty
Crypto.
Darwin for the Christmas miracle that once occurred when Raw Matt publicly linked one of his quote-unquote papers
Oh my
with
gosh.
comments turned on, and by the end of Christmas,
It was a
the
Google Doc.
entire thing, the Google Doc, the entire thing was just
Editable.
comments.
the whole, and on Google Docs, when you comment, it changes the color of the text, right?
Yep.
It was a rainbow.
Our friend Walker, just a walking fish, discovered that on Christmas Eve.
Mm-hmm.
I forget what year, 2020, 2021, whatever it was. By New Year's, that document, that publicly accessible document, which, by the way, had PLOS, I think it was PLOS Genetics, the header,
Yep.
and a
Fake
DOI number.
DOI, yeah, fake
DOI.
DOI.
All fake, not real. At no point was this submitted to a journal or uploaded. Like, it was all fake.
It was actually submitted. I found that out. It was rejected
okay.
immediately for failure to follow the editing
Yeah.
guidelines.
Existing guidelines.
It's a
Submit-
paper.
Yeah, it didn't
raw
even
paper.
get to the peer review.
It looked like a Christmas tree. By the end of it, there was not a word of that text that was in black. It was all pink and green and blue, and it was every color.
So beautiful.
Thing. It was amazing.
Actual Christmas spirit. If you don't believe in God after that, I don't know. Nothing will convince you.
I don't know. We are not done with this category yet. We are not done with this category yet.
Okay.
So we probably should finish this category.
Sure.
We are. We finished
We got to Erica, yeah.
Now we need to go to the next category.
We still have one category.
True.
Let's do it.
And I do want to say, before we move on to that category, something we may want to talk about is just like, here's this random person that thought they were going to convince me of creation, and now I'm way into evolution. And I will just, if we do that at some point, my preview for that is I had a professor, first semester undergraduate. It was a philosophy class I took because you had to take something outside your major.
Yeah.
And it was a physics professor who taught a class that she designed called Do God and Science Contradict? And I thought that sounds really interesting. She was a born-again young Earth creationist, and it was a pro-intelligent design propaganda class.
Oh.
And here's the best plot twist of this whole thing. The semester I took this class, some of you will recognize the time frame, fall 2005. It ran exactly concurrent with the Dover trial.
Interesting.
So every day we're talking in class twice a week about like Michael Behe and William Dembski. And meanwhile, then I go home from class and I pull up the Panda's Thumb and I read the latest from Dover.
Hey, Dan, do you remember that time that I asked Michael Behe if he thought that intelligent design could now count as science per the decision in the Dover case?
Do you remember that?
Remember what he said? Because it was just no.
Yeah. No,
it doesn't.
No.
And I asked him that directly on a call.
That stream doesn't exist anymore, by the way.
I know, it's so sad.
You should have downloaded it.
Me too, yeah.
Stanford's Genetic Entropy was also published in 2005.
Interesting.
I was blissfully unaware.
With the way better UFO flying over a library cover?
No, that was the first edition. The first edition is 2005.
Yeah, that's 2005. That cover's so much
UFO
better.
over the library.
I mean, it doesn't make any sense, but it's so
That's
great.
my favorite cover.
So 2005, though. Like, that is just peak 2005.
It was so the day of the final exam, I printed out the day after, I printed out the decision from Dover and was just like, I want to talk about my final exam, but really I just wanted to like, here's the Dover decision, eat that. She hated me so much.
I wanted to say, I just had a thought. What if we could get Sanford on Ancient Aliens to talk about intelligent design, but then they dishonestly edit him to sound like he's talking about aliens genetically engineering humans?
He would be so mad.
That would be so amazing. It would be my... Look, here's the thing.
How could we do that?
Ancient Aliens is a guilty pleasure of mine because it's so absurd, right? Like, did aliens actually send the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs? Ancient alien theorists contend that yes. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it's such a guilty pleasure, and I love like looking at it and going, there are actual arguments against this to deconstruct this. Or I could just point at how the original work it's based on is written by a white supremacist, or how they continuously have these people on that are suspiciously aligned with this ideology.
Weird.
We should do our last category because
all right, Erica, you are digress. Who is the best overall creationist?
You know what? Listen. May be a controversial opinion, but I gotta get it out there. I gotta get this off my chest. Rob Carter is my best behaved creationist, my best creationist, #1 for the year. Because Peter, I know you're in the audience. It's because you won last year. You're always my #1. But Rob Carter, and the reason is very simple. He actually responds. He actually engages. He's not standing for truth. He's a young Earth creationist that engages with us, like makes attempts at answering the questions most of the time. And you know what? I just think he's really charming sometimes. I love that he filmed that on the lake. I thought that was hilarious. I love when he was being sassy. That made it fun for me to respond to it. And you know what? I know for a fact he put in a ton of work on that response. Like, not only the video itself, but the actual analysis that he ran. And part of the reason I know that is because he had to admit that it was like roughly 95% in the human and chimp similarity. And he only would have admitted that if he had put his blood, sweat, and tears into that analysis. And I also appreciate that when he responded to my most recent comment, he basically agreed with everything that I said, all the way down to the fact that Tompkins did my mistake in 2 other programs, and he was just like, "Yep, that he did do that," and I don't really know what to say about it. So I wonder what's going on behind the scenes. But Rob Carter, great job. It was a clear winner for me this year, but next year Peter will be back in the game, so you're going to really have to put your back into it and make yourself a contender.
And
so
I want to apologize because for some reason, I was convinced that Rebecca had won last time, and so that she was out of the running. And I know someone tried to nominate Paleologos, but I guess that doesn't work because Peter won last time. So my apologies. I do actually have a nominee for this one because it was the one that had the fewest different responses. So when we get past TD, we're going to go on to me, and I'm going to have a pick. But Zach, who's your pick for the best overall creationist of 2023?
Yeah, I'm also going to do Rob Carter.
Fair.
And the reason, honestly, is it's funny that Erica brings this almost charming nature. It's when he does these videos in these like random places.
I love that.
And, like, he's on a bridge. Or he's on a kayak, or he's on some new place on the side of the road with some like
clock shop for some reason.
I love it.
There's just always, you never know where Rob's gonna be. Like, where in the world is Rob Carter? You know, it's just
literally no, Zach. It's literally that, and I love that he does this little like Carbon San Diego intro. He'd be like, "Hello, everybody, welcome to Biblical Genetics. My name's Dr. Rob Carter. You might wonder where I am today. I wanted to be at the blah, blah, blah statue, but today I'm actually at the blah, blah, blah statue. It's really cold, and I actually wish that I was blah, blah, blah. And the difficulty in getting up the road was XYZ. And you're just like, Carter.
Yes.
I love
He's like a toddler telling a story.
I love it.
You know what? I don't care, though. It's so amazing. And you know what? It's honestly charming. It's hard for me to be angry at Robert Carter when he's like, I made a really cool clock shop. And there's all these amazing clocks behind him.
Every time he does a video outdoors, part of me thinks, don't tell me, I want to try to figure it out.
GeoGuessr style.
Like, you're on a college campus with a distinctive bronze statue. I can probably figure it. Don't tell me. I want to try to figure it out.
No, that's good.
Based on the context.
This is a good recommendation for Carter. Carter, if you ever watch this in future videos, wait to the end of the video to tell us.
Yes.
So that we'll have some time to try to guess, and then
give
you
us
can be
a
like,
warning.
okay, and the big reveal is...
It also like drives engagement to the end of your videos. Some YouTube
True.
And give us a warning so we can pause it and be like, I'm going to try to find that building.
Or leave it in the comments where you think I am, and then reveal it next video. That's some YouTube traps right there.
We are rooting for you to grow your channel via GeoGuessr, like
Robert, my friend.
Yeah,
go full GeoGuessr with your channel.
Do it.
It'll be great.
I would watch it so much more often if it were like a puzzle. Where's Robert Carter this time?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. There's an old blog I used to love. Every week they did the view from your window contest. And like that was so much fun. I would do that every week.
Who's that guy on YouTube that he can take like it's any picture and he can like place where it is, like power lines or whatever. Like it's crazy, and he does it so quickly. You know the guy I'm talking about, right? Dan?
I know exactly who you're talking about. Yeah. Unreal. I'm so jealous.
It's really cool.
All right.
So I
my
think
nominee.
Wait, did Zach get one?
You just did.
That was Zach.
Oh, it was also Rob Carter. Yeah, never mind. I'm sorry. I'm just being dumb.
All right.
Bird-brained.
Yeah, fair.
My nominee for Best Overall Creationist 2023. Dr. Rob Carter. And here's why. Now, I said earlier that I originally nominated Carter for worst behaved for his BS, Erica's wrong, but I'm not going to tell you why because the answer lives in Canada thing. But at the same time, I originally and continue to nominate Rob Carter for Best Overall because he is literally the only young Earth creationist who is making any effort at all except for SFT and the heat problem and that mess, that cluster.
That doesn't count.
The word.
Other than the Standing for Truth Intellectual Consortium,
the Brain Trust.
Outside of the Brain Trust, the only young Earth creationist engaging at all with critics of their let's be generous and call it a model is Rob Carter. And he's doing it in a persistent and in a way, and this is specifically the reason I nominated him, because he's doing it in a way that is moving the conversation forward. Erica,
Yes.
your work is better because of what Carter has done.
True.
Yes, yes, it
Which
is.
means that Dr. Rob Carter is literally the only young Earth creationist engaging in any form of honest peer review at all. He's the only one actually participating in any form of peer review. It's informal, it's on YouTube, it doesn't matter. He is still the only one doing any form of peer review at all. And it's that specific reason. It's not that he's participating in the back and forth, but it's that his contribution has actually moved the ball down the field, and we're all better informed because of it.
Okay.
That is why I'm nominating
But
Rob
Dan,
Carter for Best Overall.
I'm going to give a spoiler, and my pick for Best Overall is also someone who's doing some peer review in a different way. But there is also some peer review from my nominee, so I'm saying only is a little bit too far, I think. But first, we're going to go to Jordan. Jordan, who is your pick for Best Overall Creationist?
So I picked Rob Carter for worst argument. I picked him for worst use of the English language. I picked him for worst behaved.
Mm-hmm.
My pick for best overall is Rob Carter.
Come on.
Yes!
The reason is, so it's similar to what Dan said. I was thinking, like, what would make someone the best overall, right? And I'm thinking not the best at young Earth creationism. It's I'm thinking of it as like the best person, our favorite, right? And so we've done it in the past for people who are like supporting LGBTQ rights and things like that, and that's all great. What Rob Carter has done, though, is he has done more than any other young Earth creationist this year to move people away from young Earth creationism. He is single-handedly tanking the credibility of his position, and if that doesn't qualify you for best, then I don't know what could.
I mean, yeah. All right, TD, you got someone who isn't Rob Carter for us?
Okay, so originally I was going to nominate Peter. Unfortunately, I can't.
Yeah.
Still, well, I consider the best overall creationist, but I do have a new nomination, and I'm going to preface by saying he's a terrible person, but it's Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House.
Wow.
And this isn't because he's pushing the field. No, it's because he's Speaker of the House.
Because he's gotten the furthest.
It's a high level.
He's taken this position to echelons previously unknown.
And he's done something for creationism, which most others haven't. He's brought it to the mainstream. He's brought it to the news. For the first time in years, probably. Late night show hosts talking about it. Insanity. Mike Johnson did it. And otherwise, he's a nobody.
No. Don't you
That's
mean
a great nomination.
Former author at AIG, Mike Johnson? Because he's
former and potentially future. Once and future author, if you will.
He's done it. That's my argument.
He's the King Arthur of young Earth creationism. King Arthur is the once and future king of England.
There you go.
Mike Johnson is the once and future author at AIG. All right, no.
Do you all remember when he won that race out of nowhere? And for weeks, people were digging through his social media history and everything. And it was and I was having conversations on Twitter with people, and it was amazing because it was this weird obsession that I have for about 3 weeks was nationally relevant. It was nuts. It was so weird.
Steve Arino. Steve Arino for $5 says, "Could Rebecca be re-nominated for the same issue since Sal did her wrong?" Yeah, she could be. But and also Pibblepunk Half Dog Half Canine says, "What we've learned from this is the bar for younger creationists is on the floor." Yeah, no, it absolutely is.
Yeah, that is true.
But here's the thing: my choice and this is the only nomination I've made so far because it was the only one that had so few people to choose from that I felt like I needed to.
4 people nominated Carter.
Yeah, basically.
Choice for Carter sweep, everyone. #Carter sweep. Vote for Carter for everything.
No,
don't vote for any of my
#justice for Jansen.
No, #Carter sweep. Carter.
All right, my choice is Marcus Ross.
Okay, I like Marcus Ross.
Now, Marcus Ross is not someone you hear about a whole lot, right? He's not super prolific. He does appear on YouTube every once in a while. I think I may have covered something he did, but he was lead author on a paper that I went over on this channel with Dr. Joel Duff and Vishanti on one of my Saturday streams, and it specifically was a paper countering an atrocious paper by Gabriella Haynes of Answers in Genesis.
That's right.
And the thing is, when Dan said that only Robert Carter was engaged in any peer review, that's why I'm disagreeing, because he, as well as the other authors, but I'm putting him in on top because he's the lead author, he pushed back on this because, I mean, let's face it, Gabriella Haynes' paper, independent of all the horrible English that Andrew Snelling should have caught because he's a native English speaker and he's the chief editor, so I'm putting it on his desk that he didn't catch the bad English. But on top of that, she evidently couldn't read a cladogram. She just didn't know what they meant. She didn't know what the basic aspects of bird anatomy were. Like, she didn't know what a pigostyle is, which is a pretty basic thing to know if you know what birds are. It's the end of a bird tail, skeletally. She couldn't actually be bothered to check on the Linnaean definition for what a bird is, despite citing Linnaeus and saying we should use his definition for bird. She didn't bother to check on it. And so Vishanti and I went on this, it might have even been a 2-episode thing, where we went through this whole paper and we just tore it apart together because it was so absurdly bad. And then later on, Marcus Ross comes in as lead author with a bunch of other people, including like Todd Wood and a few others. And they decide to also tear it apart. And honestly, in almost the exact same way that I did, which I was impressed by. I was like, yeah, these are all great criticisms. Yes, she does not evidently know how to use a cladogram. She evidently doesn't know what a pigostyle is. She evidently has not read Linnaeus' definition of what a bird is. Because when I did it, I brought up Systema Naturae in frickin' Latin and went through it in Latin to make sure I got it right, because why bother with an English translation when I can read it in damn Latin? So,
it just occurred to me, and this is like a slight pivot, but I'm hoping this brings it back, right? Because like I remember Marcus Ross's response to the Harry F. Sanders III series, the Young Earth Evolutionist series. That was also this year. So really, I should have changed to Emery Moyna for...
That was this year.
So one of us should have picked Emery. I feel like he needs an honorary...
Harry. God damn.
Okay.
We can just nominate him next year. There are no laws. We can do whatever we want.
I might veto it if it doesn't happen this year.
I feel bad not nominating Carr. But I nominated Tompkins for worse, so someone else would have to nominate Emery for.
Look, here's the thing with Emery, though. Emery he's so behind the scenes, right? Like his name was even taken off those articles.
It's more dangerous.
It is more dangerous, but it's hard to get people to vote for him when he's so behind the scenes because no one knows who he is.
He had like a cannibalistic effort, right? I mean, what Emery did is kind of crazy. Like the fact that he did Marcus Ross's video, that's why I thought of it. Is like my
super hard.
Yeah, he did.
Well, and Marcus Ross bodied him. Like I remember in Marcus Ross's interview, it was really quite good. And he was like, this is crazy. Like the fact that AIG is taking this kind of stand so hostile, right? To other young Earth creationists and like labeling them with like an othering name. Ew, that was weird. And I just can't believe we didn't nominate Emery.
I don't think we should nominate Emery because I don't think he's mentally well.
Okay, that's a good argument.
It's a fair point.
Yeah. I'm not confident about that either. And I don't want to...
Seeing some of his, what was the Rumble videos he had? They were pretty...
Where are the man and the Human Genome Project guy. Yeah.
I remember watching some of this stuff, and you could see a progression of him getting worse.
Yeah, that's also true. I don't know. If you want to see me taking on Emery / Harry F. Sanders III... watch my video series Fluffy Dino Lads, in which I take a look at him taking a look at dinosaurs, in which he says that Edmontosaurus, what was it? It was a single species of Ornithomimus. I think it was actually Ornithomimus edmontonicus, right? And he looks at two different angles of the same dinosaur skeleton in the same museum and declares that one is obviously a dinosaur and absolutely has no bird features, and the other one is a bird that has absolutely no dinosaur features. And it's the same damn skeleton. I'm not saying it's the same species. It's the same individual skeleton in the same museum and the same amount. And one of them, he was like, this is clearly a dinosaur. And the other one, he's like, this is clearly a bird, not a dinosaur. And I'm like, dude, what are you talking about?
Like, this is why people have specialties, though, right? Like, and so the question is, what happens when you get someone who has a paleontological background look at this? And the answer is you get Gabriella Haynes, and you get her paper.
Yeah.
She has a paleontological background, and she still botched it. So, like, I don't know what the answer is on that
To
one.
be fair to Gabriella Haynes, it is true that I've read her thesis, right? She is a invertebrate paleontologist who specialized in her doctoral work.
Oh, you know what? You're
in
right.
insects.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's
that's
a
right.
very different thing.
So
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
I'm
right.
not surprised that she does not know a whole lot about bird anatomy.
But then don't write a paper on it. You know what I mean?
Exactly. That's what I was going to say.
Right, because that's you get into like there's so much of this like I'm a biologist. Like, okay, but are you a biologist in the thing you're writing about? Because then you end
Right.
up with like Gunter Beckley, who is, I believe, also an insect paleontologist, writing about population genetics and the waiting time problem. It's like, well,
And we've
Yeah.
come full circle to my argument as to why they're actually just ignorant. It's that they have a particular specialty. Like Sanford can be a PhD geneticist, but it's in like a very specific kind of like biotech specialty.
And I mean, that's fair.
Not
Like,
pop gen.
Look, we'll do an example. I'm not an expert on literally anything, but we'll check something. Zach B. Hancock.
aren't you an engineer? You're
No.
an expert in everything.
No, I'm not.
That's a
me.
good point. Jordan's an expert in everything.
Well, you're not
well-
really. No, okay.
Zach.
Dapper is a historian,
No, I'm
which
not.
means
Okay.
he knows the
I
history of
have a
everything,
degree.
so he's an
I have
expert.
a bachelor's degree in history. I'm not a historian. Zach,
Oh, no, that means you're a historian. You have a degree.
that's not what that means. Zach, I have a question for you.
Then who is a historian?
If you were to characterize the fourth trochanter of the femur on dinosaurs, how would you do it?
My eyes rolled around in my head just then.
But you're a biologist.
Exactly, but
guess
like
fake.
my
But
background
if you
was in
affirmatively made a
crustaceans.
claim about it,
Yeah.
and then Dapper asked, you'd be a liar.
No, for sure.
Oh,
and like
uh-oh.
that's my whole point is that we have to like we are
And that's
highly
my point.
specialized. Having
Oh
a
my.
PhD means you are extremely specialized in one thing.
And if
I
you
will
start
argue
making
with you
arguments
all
about
day.
a different thing and you don't know what you're talking about, you're a liar.
Well,
Uh-oh.
so I would say
I think I just convinced Zach. I think I just convinced Zach.
the problem is they don't just do it for things that are outside their field.
Right,
though.
because Zach, if you made an argument about the fourth trochanter of the freaking whatever, not knowing
Femur.
anything about it, you'd be a liar. You're a dishonest hack if you do that, right?
Well, but
I'd say you're
there are
dishonest
people
if
that
you say-
think that they know something and they think they understand a
Yeah,
thing.
no, they don't
like
think
they
they
can do like a
understand
cursory Google or something and think they know it.
They
but
can't
like
do the cursory Google.
But like these things, so like if we think about like Sanford with like heritability, like he has this really stupid like portion in genetic entropy where he
Yeah.
completely
Yeah.
botches
So
the concept of heritability. If you just Google heritability, you might could come away with his level of understanding. It would be totally wrong, but like I understand where he comes from. Like if you just thought about heritable
All right,
and you
guys,
tried to use like a
don't spoil the
dictionary
debate.
definition, you might think you knew what you
All
were
right,
not
all right.
the-
We're
this is
gonna
not
have
the
to do this. We'll do
Yeah,
this.
we should actually do an actual debate. And I will absolutely host a Dan versus Zach debate. All right. So, guys, I want to
Do it.
say we're only barely over 2 hours, and I think we've had a great stream. We've had some strong nominations, great arguments for each one of them. I don't know how I would choose to vote other than
Carter Sweep.
Carter,
Hashtag justice for Jensen.
Carter sweep is at least a
Hashtag
possibility. But look, I'll tell you what. Here's what y'all can do. If you want to campaign, right? Go onto your social media, go onto your YouTube, go onto whatever, right, and post about this. Put links to this video. Put links to the polls. Tell people what you think they should vote. Go out there and campaign, right? So far, no one's been disqualified. We don't have a 14th Amendment for this, so we don't have to worry about disqualifying anyone. Yeah, sorry to bring some current events into this, but hey, it's current year, so I have to bring in current events. But thank you so much. I'm going to go around the panel and ask people if they have anything that's coming up that they want to tell people about, so they can maybe go check that out. And then I will tell people what's coming up on this channel, and then we're going to get out of here. And I've only barely finished off 2 margaritas, so we're still in pretty good, reasonable realm for alcohol consumption. And I may or may not go drink those other 3 beers over the course of the next few hours because, Jesus, I have been streaming almost nonstop since noon MST.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Woof.
I went on my show, then Cheshire Vic messages me for a show that I forgot that I had on her channel, so I'm like, oh, okay, I'll go over there. And then I came over here.
Hold on, Chesh.
So, yeah, it's been a day. I'll just say that. TD, do you have anything you want to tell people about?
Be gay, ride trains.
I'm going to say, you know what? If you don't want to be gay, you don't have to be. But if you do want to, then go for it.
Yeah.
And definitely ride trains.
Yeah, but
Ride
ride trains, yeah.
Definitely.
Jordan, you got anything for us?
Yeah, so by kind of popular demand, we're going to do another deep dive on the Shroud of Turin on my channel.
Okay.
Reason to Doubt.
By popular demand.
Yeah, so for those who may not know, we started off last year with a 3-part series that was supposed to be a 1-part and ended up just exploding on the Shroud of Turin. And it's still, to this date, still the thing we get the most comments on. And so what we decided to do was...
And your conclusion was it was the actual burial shroud of Jesus of Nazareth, right?
Of course, and
Okay,
yeah,
just
it's
checking.
100% authentic, so go check.
Got
Anyway,
it.
so the radiocarbon dating is the most important part of that. It's the thing we get the most comments on, so we're doing a deep dive on just that. So we just recorded the episode where we like lay out here's all the facts, here's what any model would have to explain, and then we're going to do subsequent evidence, go into each and every model that we are aware of that has any kind of popularity, and comparing it to those facts. So this should settle the debate. We'll be done with this. No one will. Yeah, we can just put the Shroud of Turin away forever.
Nobody will ever talk about it ever again.
Never again. We've also got a bunch of cool interviews and stuff coming up, but that's the biggest thing.
Okay. Actually, speaking of like Catholic relics and whatnot, apparently, like the Pope, like the current Pope, just like last year transferred a bunch of relics to the Patriarch of Constantinople, just like just kind of which I appreciate given the absurd number of relics and pieces of art that were stolen from Constantinople by the Catholics during various crusades. So, hey, way to start making up for it. Because, the Catholic Church, if you think the Catholic Church is just mean to non-Christians, trust me, they're mean to other Christians too. Dan, I don't know why I brought that up. Dan, what do you have coming up?
Hey, so as some of you may know, I have a channel called Creation Myths where I address the scientific creationist claims. And since I started the channel back in 2020, my release schedule has been, let's call it, sporadic, periodic, unpredictable.
No, non-periodic. Periodic implies periodicity, which you do not have.
Fair enough. That's fair.
Shall we say it has random mutations?
I was gonna suggest instead of random, chaotic might be a better word. But I have been trying diligently for this year and going back to December to have an every Wednesday have something every Wednesday, and I've been sticking to that pretty well. And this Wednesday I am so excited because my friend and colleague right next to me here, Dr. Zach Hancock, will be joining me to discuss this absolute dumpster fire of a paper from Rob Carter.
Awesome.
Who we both nominated for Best Creationist.
Look, like I said, it's on a curve, right? Best Creationist.
Great, not a curve here.
Yeah, it's on a...
But so I've got Dr. Zach is going to be joining me to talk about this. I've done some creation myths and some creation tricks and some live streams. I'm going through the answers, the new answers books from Answers in Genesis.
Nice.
And I'm just trying to keep an every Wednesday schedule, and I've been doing it. Just putting content out there into the world. And what I would love to be one of those shows on a Wednesday night? Dr. Rob Carter, I would love to have you on. The best creationist of 2023. I would love to have a conversation with you. So I'm just going to put that out there. And you know what? Justice for Jansen, Dr. Nathaniel Jansen.
There you go.
Nate.
All right.
I would love to have you on too. on a Wednesday evening on my channel. But if that's not convenient for you, I'll find another time. I'll work you into my schedule. We'll make it work. So that's my thing, and I've got some fun stuff coming up, including an absolute banger with Zach over here talking about a really fun Carter paper.
I am looking forward to that because honestly, I would love to have a Carter paper dissected in front of me. That would be great.
It might have to be a drinking stream, honestly.
I will be drinking. I don't
all right, sure. There you go. It's a drinking stream,
but I will be drinking.
Somehow I managed to get through that entire stream with Jackson Wheat and that Creationist without drinking once.
That was amazing.
That's power.
I don't know how I did it. Actually, I do know how I did it.
I think you achieved apotheosis.
Well, I mean, I did it because I just didn't want to get drunk that day, which...
It was rough.
Yeah, it was rough, though. All right, Zach, what do you got?
Yeah, so my channel is at PopGen. I am more like a pre-Christmas Dan, in that my publishing schedule is still very sporadic, and I get to it when I can get to it. I am like... a contract researcher, basically. I'm a postdoc, which means that I spend a lot of my time in the lab and like trying to get jobs, like actual permanent jobs. So like I'm super busy in real life, but when I can, I do try to put out videos, and I have been working on, and this one I've been working on for a while, but probably the next one that's going to come out is actually a waiting time video. I have a lot of like simulations, and we're going to do like some math and some simulations to show why the waiting time problem is the silliest thing that maybe they've ever come up with, and like it just mathematically falls apart when you actually you take their math and you put it into a simulation. It just falls apart. So
that's going to be better
30
math.
million mutations. 30 million mutations on both prominence and tannins. It's 30 million. There's so many.
That's going to be better math than what I did in my Stephen Meyer as a dishonest hack series, which I did do a little bit of math on. Right, I did like let's take him seriously and do the math.
Yeah.
I'm like, it didn't work. Oh no.
So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm going back to the Behe and Snokes paper, so I'm going to start there.
Nice.
And then, we're going to talk about that one, and then we're going to work all the way up to the Sanford one, which is the most recent.
Question.
Yes.
Are you doing Axe? Are you doing Axe 2004?
I don't know if I'm going to do Axe too, because Axe is not quite a waiting time.
It's not a mathematical thing. It's just
Are you doing Beckley's waiting time?
So Beckley's waiting time is not that much different actually from Sanford. So I'm going to kind of like put them together. And actually Beckley's waiting time is just like a reformulation of Behe and Snokes. It's like Behe and Snokes argument, but with regulatory elements. Like it's basically the same thing.
All right, real quick, I want to acknowledge someone in the chat. Bitcores said, I particularly, and this is in reference to my stream that I did with Jackson and Rob Groen, the Creationist. I particularly enjoyed, do you know what morphology means? Rob said, it's what the animal can morph into, isn't it?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Before we get to Erica, can I just I just want to plug Zach's channel, because Zach does great work, and if you subscribe to me and you like what I do, you're gonna like what Zach does.
Yes,
because if
Zach is just a knockoff Dan. Actually,
no. It's better than me, because here's what: if there's this XKCD comic, if you know what XKCD is, it's a webcomic. It's great, but there's a comic where it's like engineer math, physicist math, and then cosmologist math. And the cosmologist math is like, let's assume pi is 1, and then someone off camera says, like, I'm pretty sure it's more than that. And the cosmologist is like, fine, assume it's 10. Like, I don't care, whatever. That's the kind of math I do on my channel, where I'm just like, here's why the creationists are wrong. Take the best case scenario, multiply it by 10. It's still wrong. Screw them.
Yeah.
Zach does the real math, where I'm just like, I don't care, 110, it's fine, whatever, they're wrong. Zach does the real math. So, like, if you like what I do, but you want to get it, like, correct, watch what Zach does.
I'm flattered.
It's just Dan is wrong.
Are you arguing that it is in fact Zach is the I want Zach Hancock, and Dr. Dan is we have Zach Hancock at home? Is that what you're saying?
Nice. All right. Gutsy Gibbon, what do you got for us?
Oh golly. I'm trying to get out a video a week. Coming up, my most recent my most my next video on the docket is a video on Gigantopithecus. There's a cool Gigantopithecus paper that was released looking at, it's actually an insane amount of work that they did. They corroborated radiometric dates, pollen grains, and microwear on Gigantopithecus molars to really narrow down the extinction window, as well as like why they probably went extinct. And they compared it to Pongo weidenreichi, which is like an earlier species of orangutan. So it's really cool. But then it was all finished. It was uploaded. I was ready to give early access to my patrons. And then I just decided, because there's a guy at my university who is, and when I say this, I really mean it, he is the guy who started microwear in the first place. So I decided to reach out to one of his students, and I was like, what do you think about this paper? And we started going back and forth, and I've realized I don't know this. We're trying to suss it out, but there actually might be something wrong with the paper, because she does microwear, and I'll explain when I get there if it's true, just in case we're misunderstanding something. But it looks like a number might not have been correctly handled from the raw data to the published data. So like, I'm not really 100% sure what's going on there. We'll see. But the bottom line is, I don't want to release the video until I know what's going on. So it was supposed to release on Friday, so I pulled it. I was like, I'm not going to release it. So that's coming soon. In addition to that, I've got a Rob Carter video coming out soon as well. I'm really excited to talk about Rob Carter, because here's the thing. Rob Carter, I love him, as usual, #CarterSweet. But he does this thing where like he's really keen on being like, look at all the mistakes these people I don't like make. And like, that's true. I make mistakes. Here I am doing genetics. I'm not a geneticist. I should have known better. But then I was like, okay, like what does it look like when someone like Rob Carter goes out of his field? And it turns out he does. And he talks about morphology. And he talks about, as Dapper knows, bird and dinosaur morphology, or just dinosaur morphology. He talks about hominins. He talks about radiocarbon dating, which is really interesting. And then, of course, I've been doing a deep dive into his backlog on what he's done with genetic entropy. And like, that's published in a journal. You don't want to do that. You don't want to botch what's published in a journal.
My favorite paper. Paper.
Okay. We'll see about that. I'm curious if Dr. Carter is going to put his money where his mouth is, in being like, hey, like, I've made this error. Allow me to change it. And like, I'm also going to put a little pressure on him, because it turns out in the Dismantle documentary and in Is Genesis History, I think he did it in Genesis History as well, Rob touts the Tompkins numbers, and he's also mentioned it in several articles. So I'm curious as to when the notice and retraction is going to go out for the stuff that he has his name on with that, because like I went to the trouble of basically what I'm saying is I'm petty and I'm kind of a jerk sometimes. So we're going to be doing like a walkthrough of what Carter's done, and we'll see like if he's willing to do what he says he's going to do. So that's on the docket. Big video coming out about the Fight Laugh Feast convention. That's been on the works for a while. And so I'm working through that, but that's like taking forever. And I had another one that was also coming down the line. Oh, obviously, very soon, probably right after the Gigantopithecus paper, we're going to be going over Standing for Truth's latest attempt at the heat problem.
Oh, good.
This is strictly meant to be like a funny kind of jerky video. Like it's mean. The whole thing is mean, and the whole thing is just memes as well. So like, what are you gonna do? Those videos do well anyway. So
I haven't seen somebody do a better job showing that creationists have no answer to the heat problem than the guy that went on SFT recently to show that they solved the heat problem. Nobody has done a better job.
I was on
showing that they don't have a solution.
I was on Shitter, and I was sent that stream, and like, what do you mean they don't have any answers for the heat problem? I was like, you know what? Would you like to come on the channel and discuss this? Because I don't think it'll go the way you want it to. I didn't hear back.
You and Jackson should have that guy on. Absolutely. That would be great.
The moment that Donnie says to him, he's like, and Sam did this too. Like he explains that like, no, this is including radiometric dating, because if you do accelerated nuclear decay, it doesn't work. There's too much heat. Like their guest says this. Sam goes, so now what about a Z pitch? Like I've heard this thing about Z pitch. He goes, yeah, I'm not impressed by this. It doesn't work. He goes, okay, like that.
That moment was amazing, because Sam said something and then Donnie said something. He's like, well, what about this? No, I don't think that holds up. Well, what about this other thing? No, that doesn't work either. Creationists don't have it. You just really just have to ignore that.
And then us jeering from the comments. Like we're just like, wow.
We were all there. It was great.
All right, so Eric, I do want to say, before I get into what's coming up on this channel, Erica did remind me of the thing that kind of made me get over a bit of like imposter syndrome because, like, look, I don't have a PhD in any of this crap. I don't have any formal qualifications.
Doesn't help.
Okay, but like that doesn't help with the imposter syndrome, right? But the thing that actually helped me get over a lot of it was a paper about Oculodentavis, which was touted as the smallest dinosaur ever known. And I read that paper and I was like, this is a lizard. Right? That was my conclusion. I was like, this is a lizard. And then,
Little squammy.
holy crap, a few months later, the original authors published a retraction. They were like, yeah, this is a lizard. And I was like, damn it, I knew it! I knew it! And I was like, wait a minute. Did I just critically read a paleontology paper, come to a conclusion against the authors who had passed peer review, and turn out to be right about dinosaur and lizard anatomy? Yes, I did. Okay, I know what's going on. I might not be an expert, but I can talk about this intelligently with experts, and that's okay.
Yeah, also, to be clear, imposter syndrome never goes away. Like having a PhD doesn't suddenly make you feel like you're not an
but
imposter.
it helped me get over a fair bit of it, right? It made me stop feeling like I'm just cheating people when I talk about this stuff, right? Because I'm like, no, okay. If I can actually engage with actual PhDs who actually publish in this field and disagree and then actually end up being right about this, I at least am in a realm where, like, I can do this as a science communication gig, right? Like, I'm not just lying to people about this.
I mean,
right?
at this point in your life, you spend as much time reading and going and researching this as they do, right?
Yeah, I mean, maybe not quite as much, but a fair bit. Certainly much more than most lay people. Jester, Lord of Fools, for $5 says, I nominate Gutsick for Best Petty Science Channel. Steve Reno, who's been a member for 15 months and is at the tetrapod level, says, Dappa is an imposter in not loving pelagic tunicates. No, they're terrible.
Pelagic tunicates in chat.
No pelagic tunicates. Pelagic tunicates are the worst. And then Savage Geological Species Concept Cobra for $2 says, but aren't you a professional linguist? No. People keep saying that about me. In fact,
that's a good thing, though.
Dr. Josh Bowen from Digital Hammurabi, when he came on my channel, and then he went and talked to Dr. Kip Davis about his appearance on my channel, and he was like, "Yeah, I didn't know that this whole Dapper guy, like he's a linguist and whatnot." I'm like, "I'm not a linguist." And like both he and Dr. Kip Davis thought I was a linguist because like we had a stream and we were like, "Hey, let's talk about split ergativity in Sumerian."
I understood some of that.
Thank you.
We are coming up on 2.5 hours, but I do just want to say a small thing on imposter syndrome. Like Zach said, it never goes away. And I will say a couple of years ago, last year before, I don't know, at some point on the website Peaceful Science, Paul Price had the nerve to, in criticizing one of my videos or something, he tagged Joe effing Felsenstein on Peaceful Science and said, do you agree with this nonsense?
No way.
All right. But here's the best part of that whole thing, though. Then Joe came in and was like, yep, I agree with the whole thing. I was like, we're good.
All right. So on this channel, real quick, we got Kent with Bent coming up on Tuesday. On Thursday, we've got Electric Egypt, in which a guy from an Electric Universe channel, in a very thinly veiled manner, reveals what his kinks are. It turns out East him, and he's a sub. So, hey, good for him, but maybe don't pretend that's all Egyptians from ancient history. I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah, it turns out, as I'm going through this, as I'm scripting, I'm like, wait, is this just him thinly veiling his kinks? And by the end, I'm like, no, that's exactly what this is. This is just his kinks. Okay.
No judgment?
No, well, so some judgment in that you don't need to import your kinks onto an entire ancient civilization for which there's no evidence that they shared your kinks.
What if that's his kink?
Without
then there's some judgment.
In that context, yes, judgment.
Yeah, look, you can be a sub, that's great. You can have an Eastim kink, that's great. Don't pretend that that's all of Egypt.
With adults.
Yes. So that's what's coming up on Thursday. Then on Saturday, I think we're doing more, believe it or not, Rob Carter content.
Yes!
So the best young Earth creationist.
The best and somehow also the worst. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you to the panel. I'm so happy we got so many people here. Oh, TD?
I have one more thing.
Okay.
I have a question for Erica. On your upcoming Rob Carter video, On a scale from 1 to 10, how many hours?
Oh.
Oh God, that's a really good
4.
question. If I'm feeling really spicy, it could be around 3. If I decide to rein it in, which I won't, it's gonna be more like 2 hours. It's gonna be 3. It's gonna be 3 hours.
3 is a fair estimate. All right,
but
guys.
like the thing is, it's in my heart. You gotta speak your truth.
Yeah,
like
you do.
Yeah,
All right.
like.
Thank you so much. Make sure you hit like. Make sure you share this. Make sure you check out all these people's channel because they all have great channels. I'm so happy that we had an even bigger than last time and the time before that. Because before this, it was just me, Jordan, and Dan. But this time, we just doubled that panel. And it's been a lot of fun. I hope you all had fun. But with that, we're getting out of here. And I will hopefully see all of you, on Tuesday. No one is allowed to skip. Bye. Hey, before you leave, I just want to take a second to thank my patrons and channel members, especially those pledging $20 or above. Ben Tovand, Ferravara, Tapioca Weasel, Whispers, Denny5252, Eleron Teller, Horseflesh, Ian Chen, Kelvin Brostock Van Manen, Landon Knoll, Mabbity Babbity, Monkey They Them, Robert Carpenter, Sphincter of Doom, Wallace, Strawberry Vein, and Ita V. It's because of my channel members and patrons whom you're seeing on screen that this channel can stay afloat. Without you, it would all shut down. If you want to join the team, there's a link to join the channel below this video, and there's a link to join the Patreon in the description. On the Patreon, you can get a 10% discount for pledging annually, and either way, you get early access to virtually all of my scripted videos, often 3 to 5 months before they come out for the general public. Thanks for watching.